Okay, welcome to Randolph and Martin's Sports Talk on Sport and Arian. Tonight we're talking football and boxing. We've got Wayne Price on from America, our Welsh friend. How are you doing, Wayne?
Doing well, thanks, Steve. Martin, good to see you. Thanks for having me on again.
No worries, no worries. Last time we spoke, we were talking about Leeds and you thought 50 points would have been a good achievement. I was thinking, looking at the fixtures, thinking 60 points. And since we've spoken after their loss against West Ham, you've drawn against Chelsea, beaten Fulham, beaten Sheffield United, beaten Man City, drew with Liverpool, drew with Man United, beat Tottenham, beat Burnley, and beaten Southampton. And your only loss was against Brighton, which obviously that I'm gutted because that would have put them on 59 points with one game to go.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the second half of the season has just been incredible. I mean, I think the season as a whole has exceeded expectations. And the first, up till that Christmas, New Year point, right? We were always fairly confident that we were going to be okay. But I think, if anything, these last 10 games, let's say,
yeah,
I think it's just raised expectation levels now. I hope not too much. And there was a crazy scenario on Twitter this morning. It was never going to happen, but you know what Twitter's like, where certain results went Leeds' way. They could have snuck into that 7th place and got into that new UEFA Conference League, that new European competition that's going. So the funny thing is, and I know you're laughing about the Brighton game, but if we had won that game, and on form we should have won that game, and we didn't play very well at all, that one-off game, we would have been right in there for a shout. Because I think we'll beat West Brom on the weekend. We're home. Fans are allowed back in. West Brom are, probably the worst defensive team, in the league. And like I said, this 10-game form table has Leeds in second place at the moment. You know what I mean? City have got 21 points. I think Leeds have 21 points or 20 points out of those games. So I mean, it's that 2 points a game ratio, which is top 4 form, really. You know what I mean? And when you mention some of the teams that we played, before that very difficult run, Man United, Liverpool, Man City, all kind of within the same 2-week period, it was like, we hope that we've got enough points by then. And not only did we have enough points by then, but we didn't drop points against any of those teams. So even though the Brighton game is a bit of a blemish, I mean, to lose 1 in 10 of your running really is quite incredible. And I've mentioned this to you before, but I am still waiting for that famous Bielsa burnout, because 3 years now and I haven't seen it. So
you've only got one game left, and as I said, if it is disappointing, that they didn't get the result against Brighton, because Spurs are playing Leicester in the last game of the season, and Leicester obviously really need the win. Spurs, didn't they play?
They just lost.
Villa.
I just watched the Villa Spurs game. So full time was about 5-10 minutes ago. They lost 2-1. So Villa beat them 2-1 on their own patch, and bit of a toxic atmosphere there, I'll be honest.
Well, so that would, again, if results go your way, you could still, that it puts you by nice. It's the goal difference that would still put you.
It's the goal difference. Arsenal are 1-0 up right now against Palace as well. Everton beat Wolves. So, listen, it was always going to be a long shot. But if you'd offered me a guaranteed top 10 finish at the start of the season, I mean, it would have bitten your hand off, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's gone beyond that now. Not only did they far exceed that magic 40-point mark, and we're looking now to hopefully get 59 points on the weekend, 1 point short of 60. Just the football that we played as well. You know what I mean? It's been, other than that Brighton game, it's been so good to watch, and they look so fresh. I mean, the game yesterday against Southampton is probably the first time all season I've seen Bielsa messing around with the team a little bit. He's let Klitsch go to Poland, already early for the Euros. He let Robin Koch go as well to the Germany squad, or his anticipated selection in the Germany squad. So we without those two were playing very well. Kiko Casilla played only his second game in goal yesterday. Gaetano Berardi came on for his first ever Premier League appearance at halftime. So he was even messing around with the team a little bit yesterday, and we still won 2-0. I thought Southampton were the better side first half, I must say that. But I thought Leeds were well worth the win overall. And wasn't like we really broke a sweat. And so, you know, it's just the manner in some of those victories. You know, the 4-0 at Burnley last week was really, really good. You know, the City win a few weeks back with Dallas going through in the last minute after we'd been down to 10 men. Just an incredible season. And I mean, the only shame is that none of us have been in that stadium to watch it. So, you know, I feel really, you know, a lot of people are saying they're gutted that they can't be there because of the ballot and everything. But I'm really happy, you know, for every single one of those 10,000 that'll be in there on the weekend, you know, just so that, you know, somebody got to see us play in this incredible season. And the big question, you know, on everybody's lips now would be, you know, what's in store? What can we do in the summer as far as recruitment? The biggest signing will be Bielsa again. You know, that'll be the biggest signing, as it's been for the last 2 seasons. So, you know, there's no indications that there's a problem. You know, he leaves it until the last minute every single season. I think I read on The Athletic this morning that the backroom staff had already been secured. So that's a big indicator for me that, you know, Bielsa will re-sign again for at least a year or 2, hopefully. So he'll be the biggest signing, and, you know, just everything throughout the club, from the owners down to the coaching staff, the players, the fan base, the way the club is run from a business perspective as well. It's just a great time to be a Leeds fan after many years of struggle.
Does he only ever do like 1 year? Does, you know, is roll over just a 1 year roll and then?
Yeah, he's such a unique character, and if you look back through, you know, some of his managerial appointments and his subsequent relationship with those, I mean, the most famous one is he walked out on Lazio after 2 days. So like his demands weren't met, and you know, and he walked with Leeds. I think he's got a set of owners, and a director of football and the CEO. So you've got, you know, Radrazani, the owner, Angus Kinnear is the CEO, and Victor Orta, the director of football, and it just works. You know what I mean? But it's the way he is with the city itself as well. He's, you know what I mean? They've taken him in and he's taken to them. So it just seems to be a marriage made in heaven. And you know, the guy's 66 years old now, and he's been away from his family in Argentina for, you know, the best part of 3 years. I'm sure he'll go back there for a little while and then come back. But the longer this man is in charge of the club is, you know, it's the better for us. And, you know, the next managerial appointment Leeds make, I hope they allow him to have some input, because he's really built something in over 3 years. So, you know, it's a legacy, and, you know, we need to continue that. So, you know, I think, knowing Leeds fans as I do, and myself as well, you know, this year, fine, top 10, amazing, fantastic season, won a lot of friends, I think, with the way that we've played football. But ask any Leeds fan, they won't want to be mid-table for long. You know, they'll want to see the club invest in players and push in for, let's call it that top 7 now then, you know. So, you know, and the way we're playing at the moment, if we can carry that into next season with some smart additions, who knows? There's no reason why we can't do it.
If he's obviously, if he's 66 now, then another 1 or 2 years, you know, he's probably looking at this could be his last big project. You know, he's probably not going to go on until he's 70, 75. He doesn't seem that kind of character.
I wouldn't have thought so. No, I mean, we just saw Roy Hodgson obviously retiring. Oh, well, I know he's finishing as Palace boss today, and he's 75 years old, and, you know, 40 years in football management. And I don't see Bielsa doing that either. You know, I think you'll see him, you know, certainly before he's 70, you know, go back to Argentina. He's, you know, that's one of the things with him being in charge of Leeds, and the uniqueness of him being in charge of Leeds is like, we've all of us fans have got to know his kind of like background and his past history. So he's from Rosario in Argentina, and as you know, Steve, my wife is Argentinian, so, you know, I've done a little bit of geographical research. We're supposed to be visiting some of her family there next year, so I've already planned my pilgrimage to Rosario and Newell's Old Boys, where the stadium is named after him, and it's, you know, a very famous story that he paid £2 million or $2 million out of his own pocket to build their academy there as well. So, like, you know, I think you'll end up seeing him going back there and settling there, you know, or retiring there. So, you know, it's just been a great honeymoon and a great marriage, and, you know, I've got no doubt in my mind he signs on for next year. I think he'll want to have a crack at, like I said, those top 7 places. It looks like 7th place now will get some sort of European competition, right? So I think with Leeds, you know, I haven't been in Europe for probably 20 years now. So, you know, 7th place and some brand new European competition won't bother Leeds fans in the short term. But, you know, there's definitely some basis for success there now, you know, not just on the field, but off the field as well. You know, they're talking about moving the training ground to the centre of the city and closer to the stadium, and there's big plans for the stadium and all that kind of thing. So I think we'll see the capacity increased over the next 2 or 3 years as well. So, like I said, it's just a club, you know, that's in the current climate as well, you know, with COVID, and I think it's just we haven't spent the money that other, you know, clubs have spent, but what money we do have, we're spending it properly. So, you know, it's just a very, very well run club at the moment, and I haven't always been able to say that over the past 2 decades.
Would you say then, obviously, with the Euros coming up, what percentage of your guys are going to be in the Euros? Because there's always the thing of so Euros, you're looking at June, the burnout of players, you know, coming, having a couple of weeks off in July and then straight back into pre-season, especially after such a condensed season this year of playing, looking at United playing 5 games in 11 days, you know, and then people on Twitter, you mentioned Twitter, you got some plonkers on Twitter going, you know, oh, United should be docked points because they fielded a second string team. It's like, well, they played the night before last and they're playing the day after tomorrow, and they got a European final coming up in 10 days. You know, some of these people just are brainless.
I don't even know what makes what is a second-rate team at Man United or Manchester City. Like, they can put 2 different 11s out, and, you know, like it's not the late 80s, early 90s where there was, you know, a squad of 16 to 18 players in those days.
Yeah.
You know, when you could only have 2 subs on the bench. And I remember that rule. I think I remember somebody getting fined. It might have even been Manchester United. I'd have to check up on it. Somebody, you know, years and years ago put a very, very weak team out for a League Cup game or something like that. And you know, but then, you know, football was kind of getting modernized and the squads were getting bigger. So yeah, that's absolute nonsense. I mean, in Leeds' case, I already mentioned the 2 lads, Klitsch and Koch, who will be with Poland and Germany probably. You know, Liam Cooper was named in the Scotland squad, I think it was today, for the Euros. Calvin Phillips, I think, is a dead cert for the England squad. Alioski would be in the North Macedonian squad, so that's another one. Although he is out of contract at the end of the season, and I think Leeds will be targeting that left back area. So he might be somebody who moves on in the summer, with the very best wishes from myself. But it might just be the right time for him. And then you've got those ones then who are on the fringe, right? I mean, there's a lot of talk about Bamford maybe sneaking in, Jack Harrison maybe sneaking in. I mean, they're both uncapped at the moment. They'll do very well to get in there. But if you're actually looking just on stats, I mean, you know, Bamford's got 16 Premier League goals, which, other than Harry Kane, is the most English. You know, the most from any other English striker. Jack Harrison's goal contributions, whether scoring or assisting, is more than any other player in the Premier League apart from Bruno Fernandes, I believe. So I can't believe these boys haven't had a look in already. Obviously, I'm a little bit more biased, you know, and want to see, you know, the players, athletes, you know, whatever their nationality, do well. Tyler Roberts will be in the Welsh squad. You know, that'll be a dead cert. So there's quite a few, I think, who are in the mix. So, you know, I think we'll probably see, you know, at least 6 or 7, you know, Leeds players, you know, in the makeup for the Euros. And, you know, Rodrigo, we didn't even mention Rodrigo. He's come in right at the end now and he's fit again, and he looked great against Burnley. So, you know, will Spain take him? You know, because he was a regular in the squad when he signed for us last summer. Although he's had an injury, you know, stop-start season, but I think we'll see the best of him next year. So yeah, I mean, it's great to have the club represented in a major championships in such depth. Again, that's probably something that hasn't happened since probably the 2002 World Cup in South Korea and Japan, all those years ago, where I think there were 5 players in the England squad alone for that World Cup. You know, Ferdinand, Danny Mills, Robbie Fowler, you know, Nigel Martin. So yeah, it's you know, even like I said, even away from the club, it's great to see you know, the Leeds boys being recognised on the international stage. And like you said, Steve, the hope is that they get enough rest between now and the Euros starting, and then between the Euros finishing and pre-season starting, because Bielsa is obviously very famous for his preparation and his pre-season, and he doesn't like anything to interrupt that. And there's been one or two players over the past few years who have come in for some criticism from him because they wanted an extra week's break or whatever. So it'll be interesting to see how it all pans out.
So if there's obviously 6, 7, 8 players, there's a good proportion of the squad will get a fair bit of rest, which is obviously a good sign when you're looking at probably the top. If you're targeting top 6, top 7, most of those other clubs, even Leicester will have, probably more of a majority than a minority there.
Yeah.
United, City, Liverpool, West Ham, I'm not sure so much, but Spurs, even Everton. So it's always good to get an advantage at the start of the season. It might not even be the start of the season, because if they come in straight back from the Euros, they've got a few weeks off. They're going back into pre-season. They're all professionals. You shouldn't really have burnout. If you're getting 2 or 3 weeks off, these guys are 20, 25. They're professionals. When it's for me, it's weird even talking. The word burnout would only come to me when it's. And I just mentioned United, 5 games in 10 days. You can't run 13, 14 kilometers every other day. When you talk on on radio, and there's people listening who aren't sports people, and you go, well, marathon runners, they run 10, 12 miles 5, 6 times a week. Yeah, but they don't sprint and walk and sprint and then get hit from the side by somebody, get up, running in boots in grass. It's totally different. So to do that 3 times in 7 days, is a killer. So to do it 3 or 4 weeks in a row, especially this season, it's never been like this any other season when you've had so many games, and that doesn't even include, the FA Cup, which has been on in the last couple of months, and the Carabao Cup, and that's why teams like City, United, and them are getting to the finals these days, because they can put out totally separate teams. I think what you mentioned just now, I think it was United that got fined with the second team because they sent their first team to the World Super Cup where they played Vasco da Gama. So they
that was a fine because they actually pulled out of the FA Cup. It wasn't because they
that's it.
The second team. I'll have to the League Cup one could have been Arsenal. I'm going back late 80s, early 90s when Man United and Arsenal were kind of going at it a little bit. And then obviously the World Club Cup thing came a few years later, and that was probably the start of the demise of the FA Cup for me.
Yeah.
But you're right with what you're saying. With these squad, even Leicester, who won the cup last weekend, they have some depth these days. Leicester, and to win that cup, and to finish in the top 4 of the Premier League. I mean, you can't do that without depth. So I mean, the good thing about Leeds is, I think it's generally considered that they have one of the fittest squads in the league, and it was probably a blessing in disguise for the Leeds squad as well. We went out very early in the League Cup and the FA Cup. We were knocked out in both the first rounds we were in. I think it was the second round of the League Cup and the third round of the FA Cup. So not having a cup run, which I'd kill for, in all honesty. I was very, very jealous of the Leicester fans on the weekend, because a trophy's a trophy in my opinion. But it was probably a blessing in disguise this season that we were knocked out of those competitions early, and we could concentrate on just making a foothold in the Premier League. But given that the fitness levels that Bielsa demands from the players at Leeds, I mean, those international squads will be benefiting from very fit players first and foremost. And like you said, with the science and the nutrition and everything that's catered to these modern day players, they have everything that they want. So I've got no doubt. Sometimes I think burnout, and we've played a lot, can be used as a little bit of an excuse as well, right? So it'll certainly be interesting. But yeah, it has been. Hopefully next year now we can get back on a proper calendar. Fans will be allowed in 100%, and some sort of normality can return, because even though I've loved this season and I've watched every single game, every single Leeds game, there has been a little bit of fakeness about it to me as well, So it'll be interesting to see what happens when crowds are back in. You look at West Ham this season, for example, Steve. I mean, fantastic season. David Moyes done a great job there since he's gone back for a second spell. No fans on the back though. Might be different for a team like West Ham. Usually struggle when when the fans are there and the fans are on their back. So, they've been able to play quite freely with no toxic atmosphere coming from the terraces. Now, it's a theory, right? But it might just well have helped the club like West Ham this year not having fans. But I'm sure with with every football fan of every whatever club you support, I mean, we all want to see fans back in the stadium, and our players returning from the Euros, having been a success there, and injury free.
Yeah, me and Martin were talking about I think a few weeks ago regarding fans. Like the French rugby team, if they're losing by 3, 4, 5 points, the whole nation and especially the stadium are on their back. Whereas on the opposite side of things, Liverpool on a Tuesday night in the Champions League play with 12 men with the Kop.
They do.
So it's definitely a strange season in lots of ways. The fake noise. Saying it doesn't do it for me, but when you watch a game where there was no fake noise, that was even worse. Totally dead, and it just looked like a training game. What were your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, I think it worked with combat sports like boxing and MMA. I quite enjoyed with no crowds, but football, it did just sound like a training game. But I thought it was quite interesting. It was the first time in a while you could properly hear what the players were saying to each other, and they were constantly apologising on Sky and BT for all the swear words knocking through, which is a bit annoying. But not that I'm asked about them swearing. I don't see why they have to constantly apologise on the football. But I think for a team like Leeds, especially, I worked at Elland Road for a few years because I studied up in Leeds at Leeds Beckett. What I noticed while I was working there, the club seems to be trying to. I think they've always had quite a good connection with the city and the fans, but they've seemed to be really pushing that since I've been there, and the whole atmosphere around the club. I think it was when I first got to uni. Actually, they'd just recently bought the stadium back, so that's a big step for any team. They should always own the ground they play at. I think, we've spoken about him earlier, but it's hard not to talk about Bielsa again. He's an absolute genius of a man. I think. I thought it was such a big coup for Leeds to get him while they were playing in the Championship as well. I think Newcastle got Rafa Benitez, or he stayed with him when he tried to save him from relegation or something. You don't often see high-level European coaches in leagues like that, but he's just galvanised that squad at Elland Road. And when I was working there, especially, there was such a buzz around the ground at every game. There was a few times where they were pushing for the playoffs or looking like they were sort of going to make a run for it, and they didn't quite do it. And you get the odd fan here and there getting on the back. For the most part, though, I think a lot of the fans were aware that it was a project and he was building a side to get into the Premier League and stay there, not just to sort of bounce up one year like West Brom and Norwich seemed to. You talk a lot about like fight IQ and that. I know they talk about football and IQ for players, but for Bielsa especially, his football and IQ as a manager, we said he's a genius before, like tactically and positionally, how he sets the sides up and sort of the little aspects of training that he must do to get the players to know their roles inside out and how to shift over as a unit. And, you can train these ideas on the field, but to actually get them to come to foot in a match is a whole different predicament. He's the sort of guy that lives and breathes the game as well. I've heard stories about him driving 8-hour round trips to go and scout some player in Italy or some, random place for his managed. So that's the sort of guy you want if you're sort of getting a project together, trying to sort of build a team, someone who's going to sit there until 10:30 with a pack of cigarettes, reading match notes and looking through analysis. I've been really impressed with the intensity of the play as well. I think in training they refer to it as murder ball, is it? So
yeah, that's right. Every Wednesday.
Oh God, I can. It was just after they started letting us play in Wales again on 11-a-sides. I had a mate who had a Sunday league team. They were just after a few players for a training game. I was going to go as a sub. Flat 11 for either side showed up. So I played 90 minutes. I was blowing out my arse. So I can't imagine how those guys are doing. I mean, I'm quite unfit, to be honest with you. But I've just been so impressed with Leeds this season. And I think the way they've played has been a reason why they've stayed up. But compared to a lot of teams that come up for the first season in the Premier League for a while, they try and sit back, play deep behind the ball, be quite rigid defensively so they don't get battered every week, probably. Leeds haven't done that. They've been playing on the front foot, attacking, playing really good expansive football. They've got some of the players in to play that kind of football as well. Like Bamford's been really good since they've jumped up. I I think he was on loan at Palace in the Premier League, and I don't think he really got a shot at Chelsea. So it was probably his first proper season having a run as a starting striker. Rafinha's been a really good signing. I think don't think he cost much more than 20 million either, did he? So in this
17 million.
70, there we go. In this
bargain.
day's market as well, exactly. Rodrigo said about before, that finish against Burnley just to chip it over. It was the first one where he lobbed the keeper. Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, the recruitment as well. I've just been saying about the recruitment. I think you extended the Harrison loan. Costa's on a permanent deal now, isn't he? Because you had him on loan from Wolves, was it? So again, like Everton, like West Ham, Leicester as well, the sides who've sort of pushed on this season compared to, like, I'm an Arsenal fan, for example, we've recruited poorly for the past since I've been watching football. Yeah, exactly. I'm 24, so since I've been watching football, basically. And we're moving backwards. Teams are recruiting well, they're moving forwards. It's not hard. So very impressed with Leeds this season, and my soft spot for them has grown even larger, I have to say, as well.
Yeah, and even outside of the top four, and yes, I'm a Leeds fan, but there's no team I'd rather have watched this season outside of City. I think Leicester have been. I've really got a lot of time for Leicester and the way they run as a club these days. I think Brendan Rodgers is a really good manager. Manchester United have had a good season as well, or better than they have been doing, and maybe have a platform where they can really start to push now as well. And Chelsea have impressed me on occasions also. Obviously, they've got the Champions League final. But outside of that, you couldn't pay me to watch anybody else if it was free to watch Leeds. Like no chance. So yeah, it's been a really impressive season.
Looking, I was going to say, look into the summer. Who would you be looking to? I know we said the left back, you'd be looking to bolster a few players there. I think Barry Douglas has really played this season. I don't know what's been gone on there. Has Dallas been filling in as a left back for you mostly?
Yeah, Dallas for me is our player of the year. I mean, talk about someone who can just play anywhere now. I mean, originally when we signed him from Brentford in 2015, I think it was, he was bought as a winger, right? And maybe I think it was 1.2, 1.5 million, no more than that. And for what we've got for that money over the next 5 years, maybe not straight away, but now, I think what you're seeing is a footballer at his peak. You know what I mean? He's he's a regular for Northern Ireland as well, so a lot of experience, a lot of international football. And if you had to take one performance, for me, it was that performance against Manchester City that day where he scored both goals. Playing in the centre of the park, he's playing as the number 8. So he's played left back, he's played the number 8, he's played right wing, he's played right back, he's played holding mid. And to perform at the level that he's done, I think just shows how good a job not only Leeds have done with the recruitment, even a little bit pre-Bielsa, but what Bielsa's actually turned those players into. He's squeezed so much out of those players, and if you watch any kind of individual interview with those players, where they ask those players what's he like, what's Bielsa like, every single one of those players says the same thing more or less, is that they had strengths that they didn't know that they had until they met this man. So you know what I mean, like. I was watching Leeds Spurs, and I thought Leeds were well worth their points against Spurs. You know what I mean? They played very, very well on the day. We won 3-1. I thought we were excellent. Didn't really think Spurs were in the game apart from a 5-minute spell where they equalised. But somebody was saying, and the Leeds team looked really fit with 5-10 minutes. Well, why aren't the Tottenham team really fit then? I don't understand it. Bielsa's teams are famed for being fit. Well, shouldn't Tottenham's team be really fit as well? It's like it's a bit embarrassing really if a team's fitter than you, isn't it? At that level. But Tottenham did look absolutely knackered with 10 minutes to go, and Leeds, and you mentioned it a little bit there, Martin. They haven't come up. They were winning 2-1 at the time, but they haven't come up and thought, all right, we're winning 2-1, 10 minutes to go. We'll get men behind the ball. We just kept attacking, and we went and scored a third. Now on occasions, and when I came on the show, with Steve earlier on in the season. Leeds, I think, were a little bit, pre-Christmas, a little bit gung-ho, maybe even a little bit too gung-ho. We were winning 4-0, we were losing 4-0. We were winning 5-0, we were getting thrashed at Old Trafford 6-2, right? There just seems to be a little change after the new year. And if you look at our goals against record and, how we've defended set pieces, for example, after the new year, there's a lot more clean sheets, but the goals are still there. So whatever Bielsa thought wasn't working, he's done something. But really, it's the same team that started the season that's finished the season. So, listen, again, I'm biased, but it's been a long time. Obviously, the last 2 years in the Championship, last year was great. We won the league by 10 points, fantastic. This year's been fantastic, but we had some really poor years in that post David O'Leary, Peter Ridsdale era, right up until basically the Bielsa era, I think we can call it now. So again, he would be our most important signing of the season. But a left back is a must. It's an absolute must. A specialist left back. I think another midfield player, I think, is very, very important. We seem to be very strong at centre back now, where we weren't a year ago. And I think you will always throw in an extra forward player, right, to support Bamford, or possibly one of the wide guys. Costa is there on a permanent. Harrison's deal would be made permanent at the end of the season. There was a clause in the contract for 10 million. Jack Harrison for 10 million.
Steal.
I mean, it's an absolute steal, right? So yeah, but I think left back, central midfield, and possibly another forward. So I don't think we're looking for 6. I think we're looking for 3. So how much are we prepared to spend on that 3? We spent 100 million on 4 or 5 last summer. Can we spend 100 million again? Probably now, but maybe that 100 million goes on 3 rather than 4 or 5. So that little bit of extra quality is there to push us from 9th or 10th place, where we're going to finish, up to 7th or 6th. So but left back for me, if I had to choose one, it would be the left back area.
I think interesting what you said to do with the fitness. I think that shows the respect that the players have for Bielsa. When you look at, you mentioned Tottenham, so we can just take them as an example. They've got a coach there now. After Mourinho's era, Mourinho is famous for losing the changing room. He did it at Chelsea a couple of times. He's obviously done it at Spurs, and it's a difference between lack of respect for a coach and respect for a coach. They obviously train balls out every time, every day, to get them to the fitness levels where they are. Whereas, people like Dele Alli at Spurs is more concerned about his Instagram page. Lingard, that's why he got thrown from United to West Ham. He's obviously got quality because he's doing it now at West Ham. But they're more concerned. This isn't. It's a different era to our era, where if you didn't train flat out, and if you were down and injured, if you were injured, you'd stay down. If you weren't injured, you just got back up. And these days, it's a totally different ball game. You see it week in, week out. They get flicked and they're down and they roll around as if they've been shot, and then miraculously 10 seconds later they're up and sprinting again. I think that's the difference when you look at Bielsa's setup and the fitness levels there compared to probably lots of teams, even United or City, maybe not so much City, but with United, Ollie's getting a bit more respect now. But when you've got massive signings and £100 million players who are getting paid, £300,000 a week, and they're looking at their coach they're earning 50 times more than their coach, there's the respect and that's the word. The respect isn't there compared to what it was years ago. So I think it's down to money, and it's down to the environment.
Yeah, nail on the head for me. I mean, Bielsa's in charge. Make no mistake about it, right? Everybody knows it. That man is in charge. He's in charge of everything. The owner doesn't go against him. The director of football doesn't go against him. The CEO makes sure he's got what he wants. The players certainly don't. These players, like I mentioned, Stuart Dallas playing for Brentford 5 years ago, right? He never thought he was going to get coached by this world-class, mysterious, because he has got a bit of mystique about him, Bielsa, right? Type of guy. Luke Ayling, who came through, the Arsenal youth ranks, but then played for Yeovil Town and Bristol City. These players are giving him everything, right? And you mentioned Mourinho as well, and I've got some sympathy for Mourinho. I honestly thought he was too big for Spurs anyway, right? I mean, we can have that conversation again, but I thought that when he went there, I don't think Spurs are a big enough club for Mourinho, not the other way around. So, like, you know, obviously, yes, maybe Mourinho has peaked and he's had his day a little bit now, but he's still an exceptional manager, and he still does it his way. And, you know, you mentioned, you know, a few players, Dele Alli. No way you're going to get on with a Mourinho character. There's a reason why Tottenham Hotspur haven't won anything for years. There's a reason for that. So if you bring in, you know, a perennial winner like Mourinho, and you don't, you know, I watched the Amazon documentary. I mean, Danny Rose. I don't know if you watched the Amazon documentary, All or Nothing Spurs. I mean, you saw Danny Rose having a moan in you know, Mourinho's office, and you know, at the end you go, oh well, I'm going to have a word with Daniel as well then, like the owner, like, you know, I mean, or the part owner, you know, or you know, Daniel Levy who represents ENIC or whatever. Well, what's that going to do? Like, can you imagine that back in the day where a player's like, oh well, I'm going to speak with the owner then, you know what I mean? Like, you know, and then is the owner putting pressure on managers to put players in team? I think we see a lot more of that in the modern era as well. But I think you knocked the nail on the head. It's about the respect, and it's about, you know, knowing who's in charge. There's been times, you know, with United a little bit, you know who's really in charge, and you know, obviously there's some problems off the field there at the moment as well. You know, especially with the Super League debacle, let's call it. So I think you're going to see an interesting shift in English or British football, even European football, over the next 12 months. Because even though, you know, that kind of Super League thing got quashed as quickly as it started, I don't think we've seen the end of it. I think something might still happen in the future where the powers that be come together and try to do something. But at the end of the day, it comes down to greed, right? It comes down to the money. So are Tottenham Hotspur's players giving their manager, whether it be Mourinho or young Ryan Mason at the moment, are they giving him everything? Because Leeds United's players are. There's no doubt about it. Even if you're not a Leeds United fan, when you watch them on TV, you know they're giving everything. Every time they've lost a game, they're still giving everything. You know what I mean? I don't mind losing. And, you know, for a northern industrial city, a one-club city like Leeds, as long as you give everything, you'll always be all right with their supporters. Always. You know what I mean? They'll even take hard work over talent sometimes, you know? And, you know, I used to see this when Alan Smith was a local Leeds lad. We had Robbie Keane, Robbie Fowler in the squad. Leeds fans would rather see Alan Smith playing. He wasn't as good as those two, but he worked harder. Do you know? So, like, at Tottenham, the glamour club, the London glamour club with the shiny new stadium, are those players giving Mourinho everything and now Ryan Mason everything? I don't think so. I just watched them for 90 minutes here. Aston Villa were fairly comfortable away from home. Yeah. Like, you know, so and once they lose Harry Kane, which is again another a conversation, I'd be amazed if he doesn't leave in the summer. You know, I don't know what the fuss is about with Spurs. I'll be honest with you. But yeah, first and foremost, it comes down to, are you giving everything for your manager? In the case of Leeds United, they are. In the case of some other clubs, not just Spurs, I mean, you could argue a few other clubs, they're not, because, you know, they make that much money, and it only takes one. It only takes a Dele Alli, like you said, or a Jesse Lingard, and, you know, it only takes one to upset the apple cart a little bit, and then dominoes start falling a little bit. So, you know, it's a very interesting dynamic. But then, you know, Leeds United, you know, are never going to be Spurs, and Spurs are never going to be Leeds United. We've got our thing, they've got theirs. But you know, this just seems to be this, I don't know, fake aura around Spurs. I've never understood it, because like they haven't won a title since 1960. So,
I think
you
it's
know,
the same as you know, you can bring Arsenal into the same equation at the moment, Mart. As in, it's just a respect thing for me. You know, you mentioned Spurs, but there's lots of other clubs with the same scenario. You know, you can hark back now to, you know, Wenger and Fergie. It was all about respect. And it's a perfect example would be Pogba. Pogba was at United. Fergie could see that he's one of those, he would, you know, he's never going to work 1,000,000% for you. He's got the talent, he's got all the talent in the world, but he'll play against Man City and he'll be world class. He'll score 2 goals. He'll win the game single-handedly last season. But then when he's playing in the next 10 games, which aren't glamour games, he's not going to bother. If he was So Ferguson got rid of him straight away. Got rid of Beckham when he with his famous hairdryer treatment. Yapstam when there was a problem there.
Always.
Got rid of them.
Always.
So if you're a manager, and it's not just in that, in business or in anything, if you're a manager, you've got to, I know it's not, you don't have to rule it with an iron fist, but you can't have anybody, as you just said, Wayne, you're going to go to the owner. It's like, no, you're not going to go to the owner, mate. Pack your bags. There's your P4.
It immediately undermines his authority, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It immediately does that. And it's so disrespectful. A guy who's won Champions Leagues with the clubs that Mourinho won Champions Leagues with, Porto and Inter Milan, weren't fancied for the Champions Leagues in those particular seasons.
No.
He wasn't at Real Madrid then, or a Barcelona, or even a Man United, right? So won titles, numerous cups, and I'm just going to speak to the owner then. I'm like, well, that's everything that's wrong with your club right there.
Yeah.
Right there. Look no further. And until some of these richer clubs, and I think we've seen over the last few weeks, right, the disconnect between owners and fans, the problems with the Manchester United fans. And listen, I support those Manchester United fans, who I don't want to see, you don't want to see violence or anything like that, but those are angry people. That's a club that was originally formed on traditional working class values, which today is an American guy with dodgy hair. It's his plaything, So and we see it, there's such a disconnect between working class fans and the football clubs that they support. I mean, Martin's an Arsenal fan, and Arsenal for me are one of the great institutions of British football, and they've had so many good teams over the years, right down to if you really know your football history, down to the 1930s, and then the great Bertie Mee teams, the double winning team of the 70s, the Invincibles, just a fantastic institution, right? And Wenger was an outstanding manager for them as well. But we've got to remember, a lot of Arsenal fans wanted Wenger out, right, at the time as well, because maybe success was on the wane. Well, how's that worked out for you? Because one thing Wenger did have was the respect of his players. Yes, and maybe league titles weren't coming as often as they had them, in the past. But I think when you were managing in the Alex Ferguson era as well, if you were winning one title, in a 5-year period, because he was winning the other 4, I think you were doing okay. So but then it's been the emergence, obviously, of Chelsea with the Abramovich money, City with the Abu Dhabi group and all that. But all this that we're talking of, I think, has just created a massive disconnect between the hardcore fans of these football clubs. But I think they also know, these owners, that they don't need those hardcore fans anymore. They don't need those working class fans anymore, because somebody is going to buy a ticket. It might be somebody who doesn't know nothing about football. It might be an Asian tourist who comes over, an American tourist. Somebody's buying that ticket. You know what I mean? They're selling out that seat, whatever happens. You know what I mean? If they make it too expensive for the working class fan to go in. But I mean, I think with the whole Super League thing, it not only pulled the curtain down on the greed that's involved in football at the moment. But it also identified the massive gap between the communication and the relationship between fans and some of the so-called greedy 6, because I won't call them the big 6. I mean, there's some big clubs in there, but there's some not very big clubs in there as well. But yeah, it's been identified now, and fair play to Chelsea fans, Spurs fans, Arsenal fans, the United fans who went out there, and Liverpool fans, who went out there and protested about it. But again, something tells me that we haven't heard the last of it.
With the disconnects, you can look at the stadiums for disconnection. You mentioned about working class with you take perfect example, Highbury, the Vetchfield down in Swansea. All of the stadiums were built in the middle of housing estates.
Yeah.
You walk down, and it's not just football, even rugby, Stradey Park in Llanelli, the Swansea Stadium with the football. So you mentioned Highbury again. Or you go up to Newcastle. You walk down the street, you're walking down a terrace road, and then all of a sudden you see St James's Park, which is phenomenally high, it's just ridiculously high. But they're all built there. Whereas now you take the Emirates, it's moved. You look at Old Trafford's on an industrial estate. City's moved to the Etihad. All these big Tottenham's new stadium. And what you mentioned there about ticket sales. I went for a tour of Wembley, the new Wembley, which if it hadn't been down to money, it would have been built on the NEC in Birmingham, where they've already got train links, bus links, aeroplane right in there. But the guy that took me around, one of the executives of Wembley, basically said, look, there's one reason and it's built, I'm not, no disrespect to where it is, but it's built in an awful area. The area that it's built in is terrible. It could have been purpose built at the NEC, and it would have been fantastic with all the links there. But there's one reason only, was because there's there's the box area that goes all the way around. Had been sold out 3 years before for a 10-year debenture, and 80% of them were Chinese businessmen and Arab Emirates businessmen, and the money that they got from that was something like 2/3 of the stadium paid for beforehand, and the only reason why they wanted it there was Birmingham's the second biggest city in the UK. And it could have been fantastic for them straight in, but they're going to fly straight into London, watch the game, and then they go into London. Then London, the business capital of Europe until Brexit. But when it was built, that wasn't even a word. But that was the scenario. They'll fly in from Dubai or from China straight into Canary Wharf, then afterwards on the tube, and they're there for a week, and then they're off. Whereas they couldn't do that from Birmingham without HS2. And that was it. So it's all about the money. Exactly what you've just said. But that's a perfect example of the disconnect between clubs, their new stadiums. It's all good having an extra 10, 15,000. But if it's taking you 5 miles outside the city, which is what you said, Mart, about Leeds having a good connection with the city, bringing it into the city, they're taking it away to the suburbs for monetary reasons.
Well, where's Elland Road? I think it's in Beeston, isn't it? So
Elland Road is at the bottom of Beeston Hill. So, you know what I mean? There was some, the Ridsdale area, era I'll go back to when, obviously when Leeds were doing well at the turn of the millennium, and he was spending money that didn't exist. That's which we didn't find out until afterwards, right? There was a time where a new stadium was mentioned, and it was looked down upon. You know what I mean? Because again, it's a very, as a Leeds fan for, the best part of 32, 33 years now, and a dad who's a fanatical Leeds fan as well. You know what I mean? If you read the history of Elland Road and how Leeds is, as a club was created, it's a very, very, or it was a very, very working class place, and the biggest thing that came from the supporters was we don't want to move. You know what I mean? It's looking old now, and it needs some changes, but it's our old place, So you can still feel the West Stand there was built in the 50s, and you can still feel the Bremners walking out of there, and all these magical players that played there over the years. But I think we do have an owner who has reconnected the city with the fans as well, and has said, well, they own a lot of the area, that surrounds Elland Road. So they're like, well, let's just redevelop that, maybe on a smaller scale to the way City have done it at the Etihad. So, we don't have their money, obviously, but it just goes to show that we didn't need their money to take 4 points off them this season, So I think that's the way we're going, is where, the West Stand is old. It'll need to come down. It'll need to become replaced. I think an extra tier will go on the North Stand. But the fact of the matter is, it'll still be at the bottom of Beeston Hill. So, the amount of times I've parked the car there and walked down, or parked right next to the stadium and become familiar, with the area over a 30-year period is, from a kid to a grown man, and then taking my own children there as well. It's still the same. Everything's the same. The chip shop is still outside. The corner shop is still there. They've added to it. Obviously, we have the Bremner statue, the Revy statue. So it's still ours, though. It's still our old place. So we still have that connection. I think if you pick a club up like that, you pick that stadium up and you plonk it 3 miles outside the city, it'll never ever be the same. It would never, not for me. And I've got an old fashioned view of things, or a traditionalist view of things, but I'm also, a realist to modernism, So, I understand you can't, that you can't have a stand that's 70 years old. Like I get it. There's safety issues with things like that, and it's looking out of place now and everything like that. But it's still great when the goal goes in, and those old wooden seats are going. I can tell my sons about that now, or maybe not so much my sons because they've experienced it as well. But other people's sons my age, like they wouldn't know what a wooden seat was.
No,
you know what I mean? They wouldn't know what a wooden seat was. They wouldn't know what holding your dad's hand and seeing those floodlights for the first time, and like all that's gone. You know what I mean? So I try to move with the times. I just think there's some things about football that are sacred. There are clubs who had to move stadiums. I get that. You know what I mean? Leicester have done very well from it. Southampton have done very well from it. But I went to the Dell. I went to Filbert Street. At Leicester and Southampton. Fantastic venues to go and watch an away game. Gone forever. I like what they did with Highbury and the way they kind of kept the listed buildings, and you still see the shape of Highbury and everything like that. And the marble halls are still there and everything. But just a great football club, and they've gone down the road of an American owner as well, and obviously he's getting some stick right now. It's amazing to me. I mean, I don't think City got that much stick because with the Super League thing. Chelsea not so much, but obviously the Liverpool owners got some flack. The Man United, it's well documented, and Arsenal's owner as well. And the three things, in common there, other than the other three, City, Chelsea, Tottenham, those are the three for me. Liverpool, Arsenal, Manchester United, three of the biggest, if not the biggest, football institutions in the country, right? And they all have American owners. You know what I mean? And, the Super League was all built around some sort of franchise, no relegation, permanent membership thing. I think I said it to you, Steve, before. Football is becoming the NFL. And I live here and I see it, right? And for a brief second, I was like, geez, I think my football, because they call it football here as well, but my football is becoming their football. And it was such a scary thing to witness. And I don't think we've ever been so far away, from maybe, the things that, maybe a little less for Martin as he's a lot younger than me and you, but certainly the things that me and you experienced for the first time when we were maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, which will never ever be seen again. I don't think the disconnect has ever been bigger.
Yeah, when you're on your dad's shoulders at the Vetch Field watching Swansea against Panathinaikos, that
I still got the program of that game.
Were you there as well?
I was there. I mean, obviously with the 80s, I'm going to say 87 or 88, right?
It was 80s, yeah.
Yeah, mid to late 80s, right? So obviously, because I wanted to be a professional footballer as well, every kid's dream at the time, right? But I was never a Swansea fan, and never was my dad, but it was 25 minutes from the house. So I remember being there that night. And the Vetch Field was one of the first places I went, to watch professional football. Swansea were in the old Division 3 or Division 4 in those days. But I remember going there for the first time and thinking, wow, the Vetch Field, right? And that was the first ever professional football stadium I went to. And obviously it's this rickety old ground with the prison walls in the background and everything like that. And I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, same.
So, and then 6 months, a year later, my dad took me to Elland Road, and then Goodison Park, Anfield. I think between me and my dad, I think we've been to 80 out of the 92 Football League grounds. So, and I've been to some that were new, the new one and the old one. So, like I've been to Highbury, but I've never been to the Emirates. But Leeds haven't been in the Premier League for the last 16 years. So,
yeah.
So I've got, again, that old look, that old fashioned look and the modern look at it as well. But I just don't think youngsters today will and those are the youngsters we're talking about who want to become professional footballers, right? They look at it, they look at the Instagram, they look at, the money and the cars and the earrings and the gold and, everything that comes with it. that's not what I looked at. You know, I looked at players, you know, like Gordon Strachan and, you know, Batty I mentioned, and you know, Gary McAllister. Yeah, we all knew that they were probably making more than the average working man. Of course, they were professional footballers, but they weren't making life-changing money, but they were still world-class players. You know what I mean? A world-class player today is earning probably 10,000% more than what they were making.
Yeah.
So they did it because, yes, there was more money involved, but they loved it as well, didn't they? They loved it, and that's why it was possible. And that's, you know, that's why you saw, you know, the league title, I think, change hands quite a lot more in those days. You know, Liverpool had their periods, Arsenal, you know, Leeds won it in 92. But then when the money started coming in and the dominance by Manchester United started coming in, great to be a Man United fan at that point. Of course it was, and you know, the Fergie era. But then behind the scenes, you know, Martin Edwards was losing more and more control. The American owners came in, and now, like, you know, as a United fan yourself, I mean, like how big is the gap? How big is the gap between, you know, ownership and you as putting a bum on a seat, right? I would say it's probably bigger than it's ever been.
I think the prop you mentioned just now about fitness of the players. I think that's another problem. Is, you know, they come in at 8 o'clock in the morning. They'll do they'll have their breakfast. You know, all paid for. Everything's paid for every morning. They'll come in their Lamborghinis and their Bentleys. They'll do their couple of hours training, and then by the afternoon, you know, and even talking, you know, end of Rio Ferdinand's era. You know, he's talking by 12:30, 1 o'clock. He's on his Xbox playing against Wayne Rooney. And like, seriously, you're on 90, 100 grand a week he was on at the time. So why aren't you, you know, you literally should be a case. So it's your 9 to 5 job, Monday to Thursday. You have your Friday off. But it should be a case of, yeah, you get there, you have your breakfast. Then you have your massage. Like, that's how Wenger kept Steve Bould and... Winterburn and Dixon playing till they were 36, 37. You know, you have that. Then you've got your weight session or your sprint session, your swim session. You know, they should be training 2 or 3 times, you know, 5-6 hours a day. You're not actual training, but you're there till 5 o'clock. You're not at home playing on your Xbox by dinner time. And I think that's another problem with the fitness. I can't see any of Bielsa's lot leaving before 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
I was just going to say, one of the first things he demanded, so obviously before he signed his first contract with Leeds, is, you know, it's well documented now, but, you know, the owner and the director of football and the CEO went to Buenos Aires to discuss the possibility of him, you know, being Leeds United manager. And by the time they got there, he'd already watched every game from Leeds' previous season. So he was up to speed, and they couldn't believe how up to date with just Leeds United he was, and then the wider championship, and how much knowledge he had of the actual league, because they were, oh yeah, well, you know, great, he's a fantastic manager, but, you know, there was a lot of people, Mick McCarthy, Steve Evans, these run-of-the-mill championship managers, yeah, but can he do it on a cold Tuesday night at Rotherham United and all this kind of thing? Well, yeah, he could, you know, because he did his homework, but, you know, one of the things he wanted blueprints of the training ground. So he couldn't believe that there was no running track, right? And he couldn't believe that there was no sleeping quarters. So his belief and philosophy was, well, you know, if these boys are so privileged to be in the positions that they are, and they're underachieving, right, that they should be spending more time at the training ground. So, like, you know, players, you know, they whether they're home or away, they stay in a hotel before the game. So it creates that tight-knit group, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So they're spending more and more time with each other. They become closer to each other, and then they're prepared to go that extra yard or two out on the field for each other as well. I mean, it's a fairly simple theory when you think about it. But he couldn't believe that Leeds United, although had a modern training ground and, you know, had spent a lot of money on their training ground, didn't have these two particular things, which was a running track. Like, well, how do you make them run? Well, they run on the football field, yeah, but like really run, you know. So, you know, he demanded the blueprints for Thorpe Arch, the training ground, before agreeing to do the job. And that's just like beyond, you know, dedication and preparation and everything like that. So it's not a surprise to me, you know, that they are the way they are, because he calls the shots and he demands it. So he had the sleeping quarters built in. So, you know, it's very famous that he does triple sessions in pre-season. So they do a morning, they do an afternoon, and they do an evening, and they sleep in between. and they do it all at the ground. And so there's no getting an hour off for around the golf or a game on the Xbox or a day off with Bielsa. He fully believes that you have to completely immerse yourself in it from the day pre-season starts until the final whistle goes on the end of the season, and then you get your break, which is 3 weeks, a month, maybe a little shorter last year because of COVID, but I think it's spot on. I mean, we pay our hard-earned money to go and support the team and watch the team. That money goes into paying those guys playing wages. They're there, our pleasure, right? And he fully believes that and has got those players to buy into that. You know what I mean? I don't think that can be said for the majority of clubs probably in the Premier League. I think City have got it with Pep, because obviously he's a Bielsa disciple, right? And he has the money to spend as well. But yeah, I think you're spot on. You could never imagine any of Leeds' players currently being able to sneak off for an hour here and there. No chance.
Yeah, I think it's Leeds are in the minority. That's why they're gonna succeed. City, yes, because of Pep, but when you look at lots of other managers, Arteta at Arsenal, again, we're coming back to respect. But if you're being paid 100, even if it's 30 grand, we're talking a week. We're not about a year, 30 grand a week. So if I'm paying you, or if my boss is paying you 30 grand a week, you're going to be here for those 4 days. Your ass is mine. It needs to be that. It's got to be that kind of attitude. If you don't like it, I'm paying you this kind of money, then off you go. And yeah, Lingard, off you go to West Ham.
Yeah, and I think Mourinho's a little bit like that, and that's why I brought that up earlier on, because if I was Mourinho walking into that club and Danny Rose is having a pop and Dele Alli's just kind of going through the motions, why should Mourinho put up with that?
Exactly.
There's that says it all for me, and it's there's no wonder you haven't won a trophy for a decade, a league in 60 years. Is it 60 years? Spurs haven't won a league title. I can't believe the big six. Not for me. no way. Nothing big about him.
What's the score with Arsenal? Obviously, you've got Arteta there. He's got, you got players that that are they're named players. Forget Lacazette and Aubameyang. Their talent kind of comes through. They seem to be they're naturally fit kind of people, and they seem to have a good work ethic and a good attitude anyway. But when you've got other players there who've been brought in, Partey, Pep, or Pepe, and quite a few named other players, and they're not doing their club badge justice. Arteta seems to be again another one of those Lampard kind of characters where they've come in because of their name. They've been at the club previously. They've done well as a player, but they don't seem to have that respect as a manager. Whether it's because they're young at it, because they're a novice at it, whatever it may be. What do you think needs to change there, apart from Arteta getting growing a pair?
No, I think that is the problem really with managers like that. I struggle to call Arteta a manager, really. I do respect the guy, but he's a drummed-up coach, let's be honest with it. He was Pep's assistant for a while. And like you said, he's got the Arsenal job because of his name value. He's a former captain, won the FA Cup twice, maybe once as a player with us. He took a big pay cut to join the side as well when he signed from Everton. The last time I checked the score as well, that's why I went, we were 1-1 with Crystal Palace. I think there was about 5 minutes left, but we scored 2 in added time, so it was 3-1. Pepe got 2 and Martinelli got the other one. Good to see Martinelli firing. He's had this trouble with injuries like the last 12, maybe 18 months since we got him, to be honest, but he's such a good young talent. But that basically sums up what you said before about these big name players coming in. You look at Pepe, £72 million from Lille, I'm pretty sure it was. Second top scorer in the French league that year behind Mbappe. I think a good chunk of his goals are from the penalty spot, but just hasn't performed for the amount of money he's getting paid. I think he's probably going to be on 180k plus a week. So, if he's going to be being transferred for that value, he's meant to be a big player. He's an international for the Ivory Coast as well, but he's been scoring a bit more this end of the season. He's done all right in Europe when he's decided to show up. But you look at Willian as well, free transfer, admittedly, but I think he's on about 220k. he's just wanted to get his feet under the table so he can stay in London. He's probably happy. He's been here for years. He's 32, 33 now. He's getting up there a bit, but even in his last few years at Chelsea, he'd consistently put, string of maybe 15 to 20 out of 38 games a season, and he'd get maybe 10 goals a year playing on the wing, a couple of assists, like crosses and set pieces. Took him till a week or two ago to get his first goal for us in all competitions, I believe. And, that was a free kick as well. And he took about 5 minutes trying to take the bloody thing. But I think our recruitment's been poor, like I said before, over the past, God knows how long.
But 72 million. 72 million. That is just...
It's a hell of an outlay for one goal, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You could have got
2 or 3.
5 Rafinhas for that.
Exactly, or even we could have got 2 or 3 good quality players that would have improved our side massively. Like, you look at the defence, it absolutely leaks goals. If we didn't have Bert Leno or Emi Martinez the year before, he's done well with Villa, but if we didn't have those two between the sticks, we would be probably lower mid-table, maybe 15th, 16th, if our strikers and like midfielders aren't putting a shift in, because that defence is... we've bought Tierney and Gabriel's young, but he's looked good, but David Luiz is absolutely abhorrent. Bellerin isn't what he used to be. Oh, I think Luiz is moving on at the end of the season, actually. Got rid of Mustafi. Rob Holding, he's always been quite injury prone. He's never quite got to the level we thought he would. Callum Chambers has probably been our best defender for a while. And again, he's had a lot of time out injured, but he's sort of might be a bit of a sort of Leeds situation with like Luke Ayling and those type of players where he's, not the most gifted footballer, but he's very hard worker. He can play a pass, he can tackle, and he can run for 90 minutes. And if he can stay fit, he'll put a shift in for you. He did that for Southampton. That's why we paid at least 20 million for him as a 21-year-old. Again, like, what is that? But again, this is down to sort of big owners coming in, because they know how marketable football is with the TV rights nowadays, and especially in the Champions League now, it's behind the paywall, which for me, everyone's going on about, the Super League's killing football, blah, blah, blah. Bullshit. Died years ago when the Champions League went behind the paywall, in my opinion. You could even make the argument in 92, was it, when the first Barclays Premier League, or the first Premier League happened, and that was all signed over to Sky. You're putting football behind the paywall, and then you've got Florentino Perez bitching and moaning about, 16 to 24-year-olds aren't interested in football anymore, and there's no uptake in this age group watching football. So, well, as a 24-year-old, I can speak for a good chunk of the people in that age category that will say, well, people like you have made it unavailable for us to watch. We're having to either pirate it, stream it, bloody go on your dad's Sky Go account if you're lucky enough, or something like that. But you making it inaccessible to the working class fan, which at the end of the day is what the sport was started for. Like with United, started as Newton Heath. We started out as Dial Square. It was a factory team for the munitions factory down in Woolwich. These are lads who, be working the factory all day, and that's a pastime, going about and kicking a ball. And the other lads would come and watch them. Then it grew, and a community grows out of that. And they're taking all that away from it and sucking the life out of it just to pump money out of it. But you get to a point with some football clubs like Man United, that's a brand. The badge is iconic all over the world, the red, white and black. Arsenal to a point with our badge colours, Liverpool, Chelsea, even to a point now, City. I think it's a tough balance, sort of. You want your clubs to make money and be able to pay staff and sort of perform well in the leagues and compete with other teams in Europe. But maybe that 50+1 fan ownership model could work. What are your guys' opinions on that?
I mean, I've read a bit about it sounds good with in kind of like theory with the 50+1. I've also read, I don't know if you guys subscribe to it, it's the Athletic. So I subscribe to that, and it's a really, really good journalists on there and good articles. It's not without its problems. It has come without its problems, and there are some clubs in Germany, who want to not necessarily move away from that, but they do want to, to make more money. But it's certainly a country that definitely looks after its fans a lot better than the English league does, or the British league, for example. But I think from what I was listening to what you were saying there, Martin, some of the players on the money, you mentioned the Woolwich Arsenal, and and I know all that history as well, and it's fantastic. They're great stories to tell people because people won't know. I mean, for me, if you're an Arsenal fan, you should know about that. If you're a Leeds fan, a Man United fan, you should know where the origins of your club come from. But what I took out of what you were just saying was the amount of money that Arsenal have spent on nothing really, right? Is disgusting in a way. Like they're not going to have Champions League money again next year. Spurs are not going to have Champions League money again next year. They're already, I don't know how many hundreds of millions in debt with that stadium that they built. Liverpool quite possibly might not have Champions League football next year. So you've got 3 clubs there with massive wage bills, massive debt, all brought on by owners. By American owners, ironically again, right? And they just seem to be more playthings. I think what you have in Germany and certainly the way Leeds' owners are right now, or we do have some American interest, but not majority. I think owners need to start seeing themselves more as custodians, rather than owners of the club. Football fans will always be there longer than any owner or any chairman or any director or anything like that, because new football fans will come. People live and people die or whatever. But the price of tickets in Germany is a third of what it is in England. I read an article this week about what some of the clubs were charging for this. I don't know how much a Spurs fan had to pay today to be inside. Do they still call it White Hart Lane? Whatever it is that they call it now. But London prices upwards of 45, 50, 60 quid, I think, for 10,000 fans to be in there today. I mean, I might very well. I thought it was unbelievable what Burnley did. They let everybody in for nothing. Yeah. You know what I mean? I thought that was fantastic. So if you talk about a club that's at the heart of a community, you look at Burnley, right? You know what I mean? But then all these clubs that we're talking about, the ones at the higher end of the table, with the money, they couldn't give a monkeys about Burnley. They really couldn't. But Burnley are the ones who are letting their fans in for free. So I mean, I think there's too much money involved for it ever to change. I think it's about just like when it's a team, you're trying to get the right players, you're trying to get the right manager, you're hopeful that you get the right owner, and if you get all three, as Leeds are proven at the moment, and anything's subject to change, right? It's working. But when you get the wrong owner, the right manager, maybe some of the right players, but maybe some of the wrong players, it's not going to work. Like everything's got to hit that that nail, right? For everything to be right. You know what I mean? And Man City for me, Chelsea for me, they represent new money. Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United are the three who have always been there, but have kept up with the times. But as it got to a point now, even with those clubs, even with Arsenal, who like I've said previously, I think is an amazing footballing institution. Liverpool, Manchester United, have they even sold out now? Have they even sold their soul? I've seen some of the fans wearing, taking the 50+1 banners, but okay, great. But how much do you know about that 50+1? Right? It's like I think a lot of research has got to be done before any significant change can be made. I do agree with Gary Neville about having an independent footballing regulator as well to kind of hopefully stop this thing happening in the future. But I mean, the one that summed it up for me was I think a BBC journalist or a Sky journalist had found Joel Glazer in Florida or wherever he was. And did you see that, Steve?
Yeah.
The guy not only, I mean, he's an odd-looking guy. Let's be honest. His old man was an odd-looking guy as well. Like, and I don't know how they've made their money, but it definitely wasn't in beauty contests, right? But no. Just the fact that he didn't have it in him to stand there and fight a case or say something, anything to make those supporters of the club that you own feel even the tiniest little bit more comfortable about what's going on. Again, it says an awful lot for me, and it's an awful lot what's wrong. So you're talking about these clubs are traded on the stock market and things. There's so many different moving parts now. It's not the wealthy local businessman who owns the club anymore. It's not. It's it's a worldwide conglomerate, that has interests in these, in these sporting institutions. And Martin saying there, you can go back to to Sky in the 92-93 season. I mean, Leeds United actually went into that season as champions of the previous season. So we entered, the first, Premier League season as the current champions. And, we didn't have a very good season. And Leeds were a club who definitely didn't adapt to the changes very well. But then you saw, Manchester United doing it very well, Blackburn Rovers at the time doing it very well, but that was done through Jack Walker and his company. But that's when the real money started coming in. And it brings a lot of things. It brings a lot of greed. It brings a lot of people trying to make a quick buck, whether it's a director, an investor, whether it's a player, you know what I mean? It's the salaries. I just don't know how it's all sustainable until something bad happens. I've been involved with a club where there's been a major financial meltdown, as the one Leeds had back in 2004. And the ironic thing is, if that was today, the money that we were in debt at the time, one season's Premier League money would cover that today. Back then it didn't. Champions League football was so important to qualify for. And Leeds had that wonderful run in the year 2000 where they got to the semi-finals, but then didn't qualify for the season afterwards. And then we were in big trouble, big trouble. So how can Arsenal spend all this money on players, wages, salaries, Liverpool the same, Spurs, without Champions League football? Because when it happened to Leeds, it finished us for a decade plus. So, how long is it before somebody gets themselves into really, really big trouble, on the financial side of things? I know you can take loans out and put them on against season ticket sales and TV revenue, but all it's going to take is one disaster to happen and maybe it needs to happen, but one of these clubs that we're mentioning, or a similar sized club, whether that could be in one of the Spanish leagues, or to maybe get relegated or something like that, where they have a really, really poor season, and then that's when the light bulb goes off for everybody that could happen to us. You know what I mean? Because it certainly happened to my club at one point. But I would say the ramifications for that happening again to a big club now would be even worse. It would be even worse. I mean, Arsenal didn't have a great start to the season. Looks like they're going to finish in the top 10 now. But talking about Arsenal, a club like Arsenal finishing, they finish in the top 10. It's incredible to me. You know what I mean? Arsenal don't finish 9th place. They don't finish in 10th place. They're always up there challenging, right? So how are they going to continue to do that? And how is it going to be sustainable when they're not getting Champions League football year after year, but still are finding 72 million, as Steve said, to spend on a bang average Premier League player?
I think personally that it's a vicious circle from the 90s when at United their wage cap, Keane was on £90,000. He was getting paid. I think at the time it was the most in the Premiership. He was on 90 grand a week. He was compared with I don't know their names, but there was only 2 players in world sport who were on more than him, and they were American baseball players. Right. So he was on stupid money, and then somebody else came along and said, "No, you can't earn 90 grand." He was on 80 grand. Somebody else was on 70 grand. So he was on good money, but that was the cap. Nobody could earn more than Roy Keane. And then and then other teams started.
And he was worth it, right?
Oh, he was 100% worth it. But then other teams then started catching up because United then couldn't attract players from abroad who wanted more than that. And eventually, then after probably 3 years of it staying rigid, because you had Giggs, Keane, Scholes. And luckily, they had people like in on the sidelines there, Nicky Butt and Phil Neville with Gary Neville. As all those players were on below him. And then at some point, I can't remember who it was. I think it was before Rooney's time. They broke the wage cap. Might have even been Van Nistelrooy because they were chasing him for 3 years. And then that was it. That the seal was broken, like it is once you've had your 4th beer and you need to go to the toilet. The seal was broken. Everybody then was. And that wasn't just for United. It was a case of everybody, right? Okay, he's 100 grand up to this stupid 72 million now for that. Back then, he would have been worth 30 grand a week compared to Keane's 90. It's that simple. And everything has snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. It's got more and more and more. And now you've got, 90 grand a week now would buy you, an average person on the bench. They wouldn't even be on the bench for Man City, somebody on 90 grand a week. And that's what it's come to. Yes, you've got the TV rights. You've got you mentioned clubs going under. Chelsea, Abramovich. He's the owner, but it's a loan. So every penny that he spent, which is probably roughly £1 billion, is a loan. So if he walks away tomorrow, that club is finished, because who's going to pay that £1 billion back to Abramovich? When Jack Walker was at Blackburn, I think he was worth a couple of $100 million. If you're a club owner now and you're worth $3 billion or less, then you're not gonna play in the big league, because these guys are worth combined owners of 200-300 billion, like the Man City. Spending 250 million quid on 5 left back and right backs for Man City in an 18-month period, 250 million pounds it's nothing. They'll earn that back in 2 weeks worth of interest on the amount of money that they have. So you really talk United are a brand. They're going to be fine. They're a brand all over the world. They're going to have sales. They're going to have subscription to their channel. There's so many avenues on, as you mentioned, Wayne, stock markets, and they've got revenues all over the place as a brand. City, have the money. I think all the other clubs below that, even at Liverpool to a certain extent, they're a good brand, but they're not as strong as those top two. And for me, any club below those top two, with some small disaster like we mentioned, COVID, if something else comes along or money dries up with Sky, then there's a big problem. And another thing you mentioned, Wayne, was regarding supporters. It's taking it away. Oh, Jan, you mentioned it, Martin, taking it away from supporters. If you want to watch every game in the UK, say Leeds this year, you've got to have Amazon Prime, you've got to have BT Sport, you've got to have Sky Sport. I think that's it, isn't it? It's the 3. Is there another? I'm sure there's... No, so there's 3. So you've got to subscribe.
They did a couple on BBC, but that's free. So.
Yeah, but you get that anyway. So you've got to subscribe to 3 channels there, Leeds might only be on BT Sport for 1 game every 8 weeks. Then the other 7, you're going to have, right, okay, you need to get Amazon for those 2. I've got to get... And you're forking out loads of money, and that's even without going to watch a game. So as you both mentioned, it's being taken further and further away from the supporter. But at the end of the day, those owners don't need the supporters, because they're getting their money from everything else. That's the problem.
That is definitely the problem. Like stadiums empty. Yes, I'm sure they've taken a hit, but I don't think you have to sell a stadium out anymore. Like the model years ago was, the ground is full. Those gate receipts. If you remember years ago, they actually used to publish gate receipts. It was because it was so important to the running of the club. The gate receipts paid the players. You know what I mean? Not anymore. I mean, match day revenue, right? With the biggest clubs probably hits 2 million a match day. That's 25, 26, 27 match days if you're in a cup run or you're in Europe or whatever. That doesn't get anywhere near the TV money. Doesn't get anywhere near.
That there, what you've just mentioned there. So if that was Man United with 84,000 capacity, works out at 68 million. That wouldn't even pay for, that's not even your team's money for the season, let alone the rest of your squad, your staff, your stadium, the amount of staff you've got on match days.
The gate is just extra.
Yeah.
Whereas the gate years ago was the be all and end all.
Yeah.
It was the be all and end all, because there was nothing else. There was no TV. It was the TV rights and things like that. So what I mean. It's a monster that's been created, and we're all trying to figure out ways how to make it sustainable for not only the Premier League clubs but the pyramid, right? And all the way down to grassroots. And yes, there's some token payments, but I think a salary cap might be a good idea. I don't think you'll ever get in the Premier League, but possibly in the Championship, because we see Championship clubs. I mean, you look at the mess that Sheffield Wednesday are in right now, Derby County are in right now.
the mess that we were in, Leeds United were in for a while we were in there. You can't make money in that league. Leeds were the most watched team in the Championship for a number of seasons, even when we were mid-table and just kind of running along, we were still the most watched team. It was still everybody's, big game because, and Sky knew that that's what would get the viewers, right? Because, Leeds have a big fan base. So, but we would get 100 grand a game, £100,000 a game. In the Premier League, I think it's 1.5 million a game, isn't it? So, and that's just between, two leagues. So that's the riches. So then you have the Championship clubs gambling on trying to be one of the top 3 clubs in the Championship, top 2 and getting up via the playoffs. We've seen, closer to home, Swansea City, are obviously in the playoffs at the moment. They have struggled financially for the last few years since they dropped out of the Premier League. They must be so desperate to get back in that league, because just that one promotion will just sort everything out for 5 minutes. Just that TV revenue will sort everything out. All the problems that are having. Even if they went straight back down, Steve, it would still sort of. So you've got all these clubs gambling, on trying to make that that Premier League, because it's so lucrative. The legalities of it as well. You start bringing in a salary cap, you start watching the players start to pipe up if you bring a salary cap in. You know what I mean? The guy who's making 300 grand a week, oh, no, we're going to cap it at 100 now. Oh, yeah, he's going to just give up his 200,000 a week, just like that. All right? You'll see a mass immigration to China. I'll tell you that right now. So there's so many moving parts, mate. You know what I mean? And I think hopefully that football can come together. The people who sit at the top, the owners become a little bit more humble and become, more custodians rather than owners. And it's not, it's not a plaything for them. The guy Kroenke at Arsenal comes across as a very arrogant man to me. Never really speaks to him. It never used to be like that with Arsenal. Peter Hillwood, when he was at Arsenal, very, well-respected gentleman, and, part of the FA and all this kind of thing. It's just become so, we've talked, tonight at length about disconnect between, fans and owners, but I think there's a disconnect everywhere. You know what I mean? Players, owners, players, managers, players, supporters, owners, supporters, the clubs and the actual FA itself. A lot of these chairmen before used to sit on the FA, didn't they? Yeah. I mean, it's not the case anymore. So football back then was a very close-knit community. It's not now. It's not. I got a mate over here, also a Leeds fan. We speak about football an awful lot, a couple of times a week, and we kind of came to the conclusion that football is a TV show now. That's what it is. It's a TV show. You know what I mean? It's a reality TV show, and stadiums are built to cater towards that. And you know what I mean? The ownership structures and even the VAR. And even though I say it tongue in cheek, about our football becoming NFL, like it is over here in the States. If you go back to Sky, right, Monday Night Football, the only place I'd ever heard of Monday Night Football was NFL in America. That's where it comes from. VAR, okay, the technology. If I don't mind watching the NFL when it's in season over here. It's quite a fun thing to do and watch. I don't know a lot about it, but I enjoy it, and I like the razzmatazz about it. But it works over here in America, right? But those games are stopped every 30 seconds, 1 minute, 90 seconds for a video review. You know what I mean? We're becoming slowly like that. You can't celebrate a goal. Chelsea fans at the FA Cup final just last weekend, they went bananas when Chilwell scored in the last minute. A minute later, the Leicester fans went bananas because of a minute decision had gone against it. It's almost as if you're scared to celebrate now. And the first thing I do, even when Bamford scored for Leeds last night, because there was a hint of offside. So I didn't jump out of my chair. The first thing I was looking at the TV is a VAR decision. I don't celebrate as much as I used to, just in case. Because I don't want to feel I don't want to feel let down, right? So but all that comes from the country that I'm living in, and the American ownership is there to see. I even as well run as I've documented tonight that I believe that Leeds is being run right now. You know what I mean? The 49ers Enterprises, which is San Francisco's business arm, has increased its stake in Leeds this year to 37%. Radrazani is not a billionaire. I think he's got hundreds of millions, but I don't think he's a billionaire. So, are we seeing the start of him slowly, reducing his stake to get investment from somewhere else? Do those philosophies align? I hope they do, and everything seems to have been good so far. But there's so many horror stories out there with the American owners for sure. Khan at Fulham, Arsenal, obviously. Okay, Liverpool have had some success, but I think that their owners have been seen in a different light recently. The Glazers at Manchester United, even the lads who are in charge of a smaller club like Swansea City, they've had their problems with American owners as well. It's too much. It's too much. There's too much evidence now for it to just be a coincidence, right? But the simple fact is, they see things a certain way over here, and they don't change their ways to suit it over there. They don't. And we were so close to franchise football. We were so close to it.
Well, then they're not run as businesses. They're not there to make. Not saying they're not there to make money. I can't see. It's like watching virtual Championship Manager on a PC. They've bought the clubs. It's like, yeah, oh well, I'm going to change that player. Yeah, we'll spend 72 million. Pepe, yeah, we'll bring him in, and they know nothing about anything about the guy. It's just 72 million for him. Partey, we'll have him. We'll bring him in. Yeah, all right. That's the team for this season. Get on with it. They're not making money. It's like as if it's we'll offset the tax of everything we've got in America. We'll buy that club. We spend that money, and that's going to reduce our tax liability across the planet.
Yeah.
It can't be a business because none of these clubs are making money. West Brom go up and down because, as you mentioned just now, the word gambling. Then they're obviously not gambling when they come up to the Premier League. They got Pereira. They've got a couple of Premiership players, but they haven't gone right like Leeds have done. In the last few years. Right, we're not going to spend 100 million. There's 30. Go and do your best. If we don't, we're going to get the balloon payment up and down. So we'll stay in the black. Whereas others are. I think Norwich, they were up, then they came back down after. I think they survived for a year.
They went straight down and they're back up again.
But no, I'm on about maybe 6-7 years ago. They went up, but then because they gambled and lost, when they came back down, they were down for 2 or 3 years. So it's a massive problem. When you say about the wage gap, having a cap in the Championship, if you have a cap in the Championship but not in the Premier League, then when that Championship team comes up, that would be like, Carmarthen Town playing against Man United. The gap would just increase.
Well, I mean, over here, so I live in New York Giants country. This is where I live in the States is New York Giants, and then an hour, you go an hour south or an hour west, it's Philadelphia Eagles. So 2 massive NFL institutions. I think the New York Giants are the 4th richest sports club on the planet. Okay, they've been god awful for about a decade, but they can try again next year. You see what I mean? So they've got the draft system. There's no promotion and relegation. It works over here. If you started bringing in promotion and relegation, you can tell that the MLS over here wants to do it. I feel like they're getting, because they want to employ a more European or a more South American based system that suits football. And there's more and more MLS teams forming every year now, but they're franchises as well. So I think they may go the promotion and relegation route probably within the next 5 to 10 years. That would be my guess, and they'll keep it as 2 conferences and until then, because of the amount of travel that's involved. But with the Giants, who like I said, a $1 billion corporation, really. Okay, they haven't had a good team. But I don't see fans here demanding that they go for the Super Bowl. That's the only one thing they can go for, right? Is the Super Bowl. Yes, they get a T-shirt. We were the Division East, champions or whatever. Well, there's only 4 teams in that group. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Or the Western Conference or Eastern Conference or anything like that. They're not seen as titles. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So the main title is the Super Bowl, right? Like only one team out of the 40-something teams, can win that title. But they try again next year. Like the excitement, like ever since I've lived here 12 years, every Super Bowl Sunday we do something, whether it's at the house or we go to a friend's house to watch it. It's a big day on the American calendar, but then I can take it or leave it. When I don't see fans, it's kind of like if the Giants have a poor start over here, I get so many phone calls saying, would you like Giants tickets? Off mates who have bought season tickets. They've bought season tickets hoping that they're going to go all the way, or at least to a postseason, and get into at least into the playoffs, right? If they've lost their first 4 or 5 games of the season, people literally just give up, not only are we not going to win the Super Bowl because we're not good enough, we're not even going to get into the second part of the season. So we're only going to play 12, 14 games. So I'll just give my ticket away now, but I'll try again next year. So like it's just this ever revolving door of we'll try again next year. You know what I mean? Because there's no punishment for coming last or in mid-table, totally different to the way we do it and the way we see it. And slowly, I think that's just been getting more and more employed, over in the UK. And then when the Super League came about, where it was a members-only club, wow, I was like, that struck me in the heart. That did as an avid football fan, where we've finally gone full circle, where we say, yeah, people can't be punished anymore for not being the best, and that's what we've always been about. Is we give reward to those who finish in the top 3 or the top 2 and through the playoffs, and the title. But Super League, you can't leave it. If you're a member club, if you're a founder member, you can never go out with it. I mean, they were founding members of the Premier League. I think Luton Town were a founding member of the Premier League. I think there were certain teams who were founding members of the Premier League but never played in the Premier League because they were in that last season before it became the Premier League. So there's some founding members of the Premier League that never got to play in the Premier League. Okay. Yeah. So, but can you imagine if you'd said at that time, well, you're a founding member of this new Premier League, so you can never get relegated. Can you imagine the uproar? And I'm just glad that still exists in some form today, with football fans, young and old, is that they do see the value of promotion and relegation and being rewarded, and not just becoming this every year cycle. Well, you know what, we didn't do so well this year, but we'll try again next year. You know what I mean? And it never ever changes. How boring would that be? But that is almost what happened. It's nuts to me, mate. Absolutely crazy.
And not only that, we'll give you £3 billion a year as well.
Well, that's it right there, right? Okay, Spurs are, I think, an article published what those founding members, all the clubs, the 6 in Britain, the 3 in Spain, the 3 in Italy, whoever they were, it published a list of their debt. And it's quite extraordinary to see, when Leeds went through that meltdown, that financial meltdown, it was between 100 and 120 million. That was that we were in debt and we were in big trouble, right? These clubs are £1 billion in debt, £1 billion, and it's all based on future TV revenue and sales and Champions League appearances and all this kind of thing. But like you said, right, these businesses are not making money. Okay, so if you're $1 billion in debt, but somebody offers you 3 to sell your soul, well, I wipe out the $1 billion, and I've still got 2 left over, right? So, yeah. That's where that greed element then, and the non-care for the average fan and everything like that comes into it. I mean, I don't think any players wanted it. I mean, Perez was mentioned, I think, by Martin earlier on in the conversation, and what abhorrent man he is. You know what I mean? With talking about it, and this is the future. It's the only way. It's the only way football can be saved. It might be the only way Real Madrid can be saved, mate. I don't know, but I don't want any part of it. I really, really don't want any part of it, and I just hope it doesn't rear its ugly head again. But as I've stated a couple of times, I don't think we've seen the last of it.
I think it's a bit crazy anyway, because at the end of the day, how often are your fans gonna, if you're playing in, however many games, I didn't even look at the structure because I knew straight away within a day it wasn't gonna, it wasn't gonna happen. So I didn't even bother looking at the structure. But if it's, if it's 2 leagues of 6, then that means you've got 5 away games against, 5 teams abroad. And they must have been playing each other twice at home, twice. You're not going to just be playing 6 games. But it's just absolutely crazy, the amount of travel they're expecting fans to do.
100%. And you know what was crazy to me? So obviously, I used to listen to TalkSport a lot more a while back than I do now. I do think it's not as good now as it used to be. I think there's a lot of clickbait that goes on now, and a lot of callers and things like that are set up. But I was so amazed at the amount of fans that actually called in supporting this thing. It was crazy to me. So and I don't want to keep sounding like I'm bashing Spurs, but there was a Spurs fan on, which was actually backed up later on in the call by an Arsenal fan. So Spurs and Arsenal fans working together was crazy to me. But basically, what he was saying was, well, I think everybody needs to calm down. What's not to like about it? And so kind of the presenters are like, hang on, we've got somebody here who actually thinks this is a good thing. So he was saying, well, I'd much rather go away. This is a Spurs fan, don't forget. I'd much rather go away to AC Milan, Real Madrid, Barcelona than Rubin Kazan, some, obscure team in Kazakhstan. And I'm thinking, mate, you just got knocked out by Dynamo Kiev. Like a week before, they couldn't beat Dynamo Kiev to progress in the Europa League. But he's like, and that's what it does to people. That's what it does to people's minds. So that Spurs fan sees them as the elite. We're part of the elite. When I thought it was quite embarrassing for Spurs a little bit to be even involved in the conversation. So I'll give Levy some credit. He must have been some genius to get a seat at the table there. But it was amazing to me that there were people who were actually prepared to support this. So supporters who regular football fans, maybe not as clued up as the 3 of us, but like they were like, yeah, it sounds great to me, like. So I don't know how old this caller was. Me and you were in our 40s, Steve. Martin's in his mid-20s, but like surely age doesn't matter here, where you can't see this thing for exactly what it is, which is a non, I can never get thrown out, knocked out, relegated, and I'm guaranteed. I mean, there's just only one word that can be used, and it's greed. Like for me, I'll take European qualification. I don't care what competitions they're in. If I have to go to Russia or Kazakhstan or France or Portugal, I don't care it is. I'll go and watch my team. You know me. I'll go and watch my team anywhere on the planet, right? But like, I thought, how dare you say, well, I'd rather go there than go there, when you couldn't even beat a team from Eastern Europe with your wage bill and the players that you have at your disposal a week before the Super League was announced. Like, it's crazy to me, but there are people out there who like this sort of thing, and that's probably the craziest part of all.
Well, it's like being in the private members club. You have or having a debenture in a football stadium, and you've got it for 10 years, and it's yours for 10 years. But what you said earlier on about Germany, straight away, the Germans, nah, we're not having that. Yeah, forget it. So that straight away it was like, their supporters, they thought of their country, they thought of their football supporters like they do with their prices, and they did, and they were off the table before it was even mentioned, and that's interesting. It
is very interesting with them, and there is a wider part of this as well. So they said no. So how can it ever be a Super League without Bayern Munich anyway?
Yeah,
right. But like, why was it?
But they put Spurs in, so it was okay.
I don't know how they got
on Arsenal.
I don't know. So well, there we go. What was the criteria, right? We don't know what the criteria was. I can see where the criteria is with Manchester United and Real Madrid. I get that part. I don't know what the extra criteria was for Spurs to get in there. But why are not Ajax Amsterdam in conversation? Why are Porto and Benfica not in the conversation? There's some massive European clubs out there. Even if you go, it was only the 90s where I remember. I know it's a lot different in the Balkans these days, but Red Star Belgrade were a massive football club, and they won the European Cup in the early 90s. You know what I mean? Like, why was it just reduced to 6 teams from England, which is, you know, almost, you know, basically 40% of our league, right? And then 2 or 3 from Spain, 2 or 3 from Italy, and then we'll tell you who else, but nobody from Germany because they don't like this sort of thing. I mean, definitely wasn't thought through, for sure. But the fact that these guys were around the table and said, "Oh yeah, let's do it. Yeah, I'm on board. Let's announce it." Like, they actually thought it would go down well, or they were. I'm sure they expected some form of criticism, not at the level that we've seen with Man United fans breaking into a stadium, right? I mean, I think they've had a shock. But all of them, you know, I even saw Daniel Levy on BBC Sport this morning. Yeah, you know, we've kind of missed, you know, we've let ourselves go a little bit with a few things over the last few years. Really, mate? Like you think so? Do you know what I mean? So I mean, it's crazy that those guys who live on different planets to us, private jets, private houses, 5 mansions, one in the, you know, accounts in the Cayman Islands and all that kind of thing. It's a different world, right? They probably don't understand. So I might even have some sympathy. But when the regular fan is like, "Oh yeah, you know what I mean, I'd rather go there than there." That's the beauty about competition, isn't it? You go and pit your wits against a team from a different country. Sometimes you know all about them. Sometimes you know nothing about them. But like, you can't just turn up because you'll get turned over, as Spurs saw in the Europa League this year. They even took a lead, I think. I can't remember correctly, but I think they took a lead to Dynamo Kiev and still got turned over. I think it was Kiev who beat them, right? So in the Europa League. I think so. So, like, you know, like how dare anyone say, "Well, yeah, I'll go there because that'll be a great weekend." You know what I mean? I'll go to Milan for the weekend. I'll go to Madrid for the weekend. But I ain't going to, I ain't going to Rubin Kazan. I ain't going to Shakhtar Donetsk. You know what I mean? I mean, those teams with it, you know, themselves have earned the right to be in conversations. Shakhtar Donetsk have been in the Champions League more often than Tottenham Hotspur, more often than Leeds United over the last 20 years. You know, you look at up and coming teams in Italy at the moment. You know, Atalanta have been unbelievable. You know, for a couple of years now, but this season, you know, on their budget and a less fancied club. I remember Merthyr Tydfil playing against Atalanta years ago, Steve. I don't know if you remember that, but in the 80s when Welsh teams were in the cup, in the old Cup Winners' Cup. But that's the beauty of it, isn't it? You go to Merthyr now and you talk to anybody who's 40, 50 years old. Everybody remembers that game. You know, all that's over if we did this. It's over forever. Like there's no dream stories or memories or anything. It'll just be the same teams playing the same teams every single year, just like the NFL, which is 45 minutes from my doorstep over here. We play New York Giants, play the same teams every year. Same schedule. They always open against Dallas Cowboys every year. You know what I mean? So it's not even a fixture list. They play against the same teams. You know what I mean?
Crazy.
New York Giants opening game. I could, you know, anybody could check on this, but I'm pretty certain New York Giants' opening game every season is against the Dallas Cowboys. Every year. So it's not, you know, how excited do you get when the fixture list comes out? You know, straight away I'm looking for, you know, as a Leeds fan, I'll look for Man United straight away. You know what I mean? Then I'll look at our first 3. Then I'll look at our last 3. Then I'll think, right, if we're in with a chance, you know, March and April is important. So then I'll have a look at that. Then I'll start planning which games I can get to. And you know, it doesn't happen over here. You know who you're going to play. You know who you're going to play. And you know when you're going to play them. It's banana. It's bananas to me, mate. But it works here. It's not for me to change it here, right? You know what I mean? I've made a choice to come and live here. It's not for me to say, "Oh, well, this is the way we do it." No, this is the way they do it, and it works for them. But these people here come over to us and say, "Nah, we should do it. We should do it this way. This is what works for us, and we should implement it over here." But I think those owners have had a nasty shock. But the fact that they didn't think that there would be that much, outcry over this is bananas to me.
If they've got so in the NFL, then if they've got that whatever it is, 32 teams, 48 teams, and they're all in their in the East Coast. I know that I used to watch it a lot with the Chicago Bears and Washington Redskins in the 1990s and the Eastern Conference, Western Conference. If they're playing the same teams all the time every year, aren't there any up and coming? So what happens to any up and coming teams then? Is there no way of any other teams, any new teams coming in?
No. So what they do, sometimes they relocate over here, right? So like, what we might have known as kids as the Los Angeles Raiders became the Oakland Raiders. And I believe the Raiders now have moved to Las Vegas. So so think about, if you were a Los Angeles Raiders fan, and then your team is taken away from you and moved 600 miles north. Like not only, you don't want to support that other city, do you? Right? And like, it is like a big thing with the 49ers being involved with Leeds. They're giving Leeds a lot of information now on where they've been good for the club is how to generate more match day revenue and things like that. That's where their level of expertise at boardroom level is right now, and hopefully that's where it stays. If they can do that and they can get a return on their investment, great. But what I read was the 49ers, this stadium was only about 25, 30 years old. Fantastic stadium in the heart of San Francisco. They moved it outside of the city, and there was like uproar about it. You know what I mean? So those are the things that concern me as a Leeds fan. It's like, all right, are they saying, well, this is what worked for us? Let's move Leeds closer to Huddersfield. It doesn't work for us, and it doesn't necessarily work here. Even in the baseball game here, there's been some tremendous stories here. Obviously baseball in the United States is its national pastime, really. And we had the Brooklyn Dodgers, or they were the Brooklyn Dodgers, I should say, based out of New York many years ago. I don't know if you watched the movie 42 about Jackie Robinson and things like that. So I remember my dad was visiting, and we would speak. We were up that end one day, having a day out in New York, and we were talking to an old Brooklyn Dodgers fan, and this guy must have been in his 70s at the time. But one day, the Brooklyn Dodgers was picked up and moved to Los Angeles, not an hour away, the other side of the country. And he said it just ripped his heart out. It ripped his heart out that his baseball team that he'd supported since he was a kid was one day just picked up and said, we're going to play in Los Angeles from now on. It's now the Los Angeles Dodgers. So that's what it did to a fan of an American sport, right? And I can totally relate. I totally understand his feelings, but they don't see it as that big a deal over here. Obviously, this guy did. I mean, his local team was taken away. Brooklyn is a very obviously big community and one of the 5 boroughs in New York. And I'm like, so who did you support afterwards? He goes, nobody.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If you've been doing it, well, even if you'd only been doing it for 25 years, and there's no other team in your area, within 100-mile radius, you're not going to travel 120 miles to watch a team that you've never supported before.
Right. And the closest thing we've seen probably is Wimbledon and MK Dons, right? That's the closest thing that we've seen to it here. And we've all seen the issues that, that kind of created. I still don't know what the MK Dons have tried to do. I think I know what they intended to do, and they built this massive stadium, in Milton Keynes. It's a really nice stadium, by the way, which is always empty. I don't understand it. Wouldn't it have been better to support Wimbledon? It's great to see Wimbledon going back to Plough Lane, by the way. Talking about clubs from the past and who have risen from the dead and things like that. But again, no, that's what football is all about. That's what our football is all about. It's not like that here. You know what I mean? I've seen the way they support their teams, and people support their teams over here. They support their NFL teams and they support their baseball teams. But this place was corporate before the UK ever was. You know what I mean? So whatever we're witnessing now has somehow filtered through from here. There's with the TV, the money. Back in the 90s, you wouldn't have had a footballer that was on a par with an NFL player. Now we do, right? Ronaldo and Messi and the Beckham in years gone by, with the money that they can generate. But it's definitely more of a worldwide thing now. But slowly forgetting its local, its local origins. You know what I mean? Which we've spoken quite a bit about, and it's been good to reminisce about it. But I just I'm sure the same as you two. I just hope it I hope it never changes in the format that we know it. And I don't think that's because we're scared of change. We had change. The Premier League became the Premier League from the old First Division. The back pass rule was another change, right? Nobody wanted that to change, but we kind of thought, well, actually, it was a very good rule change. So I don't think we're scared of change, but I think we're scared of not remembering who we are. I think that's what frightens me a little bit. So, as I get into the second half of my life, I hope it doesn't change too much. Changes for the better, yeah, no problem, but changes for the worst, which this thing obviously was. It can do one as far as I'm concerned.
You're saying about corporate America. I just remembered now when Keane was on 90 grand, it wasn't to do with the comparing him to one baseball player. It was Keane was on £90,000 and the top baseball player was on $660,000. So it would have been hundreds of baseball players on more than him, but they were just comparing the top baseball player. So the amount of money generated back then in America, it's obviously a lot more now. They're probably on, they're on £100 and something million contracts, aren't they?
Yeah, long-term contracts with the baseball, 5, 6, 7-year contracts at 150 million a pop. It's ridiculous with the baseball. NFL as well. I mean, everybody's getting ready now. I mean, what are we? We're in May, so preseason will be starting for the NFL team soon, and then August will come around, and it'll be the first Sunday, the first game is on a Sunday. It's a great occasion. You know what I mean? I'll go down to the local and I'll watch it. The pub will be full, and everybody will be cheering their team on, and it's fun. But 4 or 5 weeks in, it dies off. Because if some of those teams are not having a run, like in this area, I've been here when the Giants have won the Super Bowl, and it's bananas. It really is. But if they're not in the running, the pub's empty. You know what I mean? So if we're winning, I'll go. If we're losing, try again next year.
That's just crazy. Even after 3 or 4 weeks.
You know what I mean? Like I'm obviously I've supported Leeds for a long time, but I didn't stop supporting Leeds because we were in the Championship. I didn't stop supporting them because we were in League One. If anything, I started going to more games, because I was like, well, they really, really need my support now. They really need it. You know what I mean? So, but then, I used to argue with fans. Some guys were like, oh, this is great down here in League One, going to all these different grounds. I was like, you can shove your League One where the sun doesn't shine, mate. I was like, I don't mind being here to support it, but I don't want to be here next year. Yeah, exactly. So the minds of fans are fickle as well. I get that, but for me, I just want I think Leeds United are a big football club in English football. It's a one club city. If somebody can get that train going, like we did in the mid 60s and mid 70s and in the Howard Wilkinson era as well, it's a pretty tough train to stop. So maybe we're going through our little third renaissance here now at the moment, and I want success just as much as the next man. I've won 2 trophies with Leeds since I've been supporting them. And, 2 trophies since what, 1988. You know what I mean? Or you can throw in a third if you count the second division one as well. But I've been to a League Cup final and lost. I've never been to an FA Cup final. I've been to a couple of European semi-finals, but never that silver trophy at the end of it. And that's what I want. Same as any other fan. Like, I'm jealous of Leicester City right now. You know what I mean? So. I'd swap your 2 last 20 years for mine if you want.
How many more do you think you would have won if Cantona had stayed? If Wilkinson hadn't got rid of him?
I don't think so. I mean, we touched upon it a little bit, but Leeds didn't adapt well to be in those last champions. There's actually a fantastic book you can buy called the Last Champions, which is about Leeds's 91-92 season, where it was the old Football League, the old division. And then, I thought, Manchester United was so much better at adapting to the new way of doing things. And, and Ferguson as well, in all fairness to him. And Howard Wilkinson was very set in his ways. Fantastic. I'll never say a bad word about Wilkinson, but he didn't adapt well to the back pass rule change, for example, with the way that he played the game, and the new money that came into the game as well. He bought poorly. I think even if Cantona had stayed another season or two, I don't think we would ever have got to the same level again, because in truth, the squad needed a complete overhaul. I remember having pictures of Eric Cantona all over my bedroom wall. I was 12, 13 years old. And I remember finding 50 pence from somewhere and going down to the phone box at the bottom of Waniago and calling up the club call. You remember the old club call, to find out if it was true, because my mates were calling me and telling me, yeah, he's left for Man United. I couldn't believe it. I didn't know, no chance. And it was true. And I remember I had a very, very empty wall by the end of the day. So a lot of those, photographs of him cut out of Shoot magazine and Match magazine were very quickly put in the bin. But listen, as an older man now, and I might have had a lot of hatred back then, as there always has been between the two, but what a wonderful footballer. I saw him score a hat-trick at Wembley. I saw him score a hat-trick, at Elland Road. So I saw a lot of his best times in a Leeds shirt, being there, live, not just on TV, but being there. Absolutely, incredible talent. And that transfer, and we all know the history behind the transfer, and the lack of finances were involved. What would he be worth today, right? But there was so much in place for him at Man United. He was just the last piece.
Yeah.
With us at the time, he was probably the first piece, because, even though he came in on the back end of that title run, it was obvious then, this was a big time player, and we had, the likes of Strachan and a couple of older centre halves, and John Lukic was in goals. These players were coming towards, they peaked and won the title, which was fantastic for them. But, they were definitely, closer towards the end of their career. Cantona was not that he was just starting out, but that 5 years afterwards, right? I mean, the success he had there, I think it was 4 titles in 5 years. And, even though it was sad to see him in the red of Manchester, I can't, as a football fan and a football man, I can't say anything but, good things about him, as far as his quality on the field and some of the performances that he did out. And if you look at even through the controversy, Ferguson stuck by him as well, which I thought was huge. So, it just goes to show a lot about Ferguson's, man management at the time, and getting the best out of a very, very flawed genius in some ways, because, yes, he won the title at Leeds, but really he just came in at the back end. Did he help push us over the line a little bit? Yeah, but it wasn't his title. I mean, some of those titles he won afterwards as captain, and bringing on some of those younger players. I just, looking back on it now, pains me still to say it a little bit, but he was probably the perfect fit for Manchester United at that time.
Oh, he's incredible. Just, the story, I read his autobiography from when he was in France to come into Leeds and then to United. Unbelievable player. He said about winning the league, he kind of piggybacked on the back of Leeds winning it anyway. There's a good chance they would have won it. But when he was at United, there was one season, something along the lines of the last 9 games, we won 8 of them, maybe 1-0 or 2-1. And he scored every single goal.
I know the run you're talking about, and he was popping up with 85th minute winners, and away to Newcastle and home to Liverpool and things like that. I remember the period that you were talking about. I mean, obviously Leeds was still in the Premier League at that time as well, but Leeds became a decent top 5, top 6 club after they won the title. We didn't really progress. You know what I mean? And there's a part of me, with Leeds that is kind of okay with that as well, because we're not a London club. We're not Manchester United. I think Leeds are always a little bit behind them, but I'm okay with that in a strange sort of ways, and maybe it's a little bit difficult for me to explain. But we've other than that period where we chased the dream or lived the dream, as Peter Ridsdale like to say, we never tried to be anything we weren't. And I've kind of had these periods of time where we've had relative success, you know what I mean, without possibly the trophy at the end of it. I think that O'Leary team not winning a trophy was a very sad thing, because they had such a good team. For that team not to win a trophy was you know, even a cup, a League Cup or anything like that was strange to me, because, you know, as far as a young team, I don't think Britain had seen a team full of kids really, with a sprinkling of experience, right? With Martin and Radebi, Batty possibly. I don't think we'd seen, you know, a young team in Britain like that probably since you know, Matt Busby and, you know, the famous Busby Babes. But the difference between, again, Manchester United's the Busby Babes and O'Leary's young team was that Manchester United won a couple of things and Leeds didn't, and that's what ultimately, you know, started the downfall. I mean, I mean, if you look at the teams I support, Steve, right? I'm Leeds, I'm Wales, and I'm Glamorgan County Cricket Club. So I'm like, you know, the trophies come around once in a blue moon for me. So a little bit more often would be nice, but I'll always be there. That's for sure.
I think that was another plus point of having Cantona in. The stories of him, you know, being the first one there and the last one to leave, and, you know, giving Beckham free kick tips, you know, when he first came on board, and talk about you talk about the Busby Babes. Well, then, you know, with Fergie's youngsters, you know, Alan Hansen, you can never win a championship with a bunch of kids. Well, I think Cantona was a catalyst.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a
you know,
great
he was a
that
catalyst.
was an exceptional team as well, of course. You know, good team.
Yeah, and I know he was the gel. I think he was the gel that brought it all together. With as we've mentioned earlier on, the work ethic. You know, you've got a guy coming in. Yeah, you know, he's arrogant, but for me, if you're that good at something, you can be arrogant. It doesn't make any difference.
It was a confident arrogance, though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it was like a little bit. You know, Zlatan's a little bit similar in that respect. When you've got that world class talent. You know, and, you know, as you know, I coach over here and things like that, and, you know, been involved in football from a youth perspective over here for 12 years. You know, I like players who have got a little bit of arrogance.
Yeah.
You know, and it's definitely a more rarer thing to see in youth players these days, is certainly in the United States, which we've talked at length about before. But, you know what I mean? I don't mind the player who's got a little bit of bite about him, a little bit of needle about him, a little bit of confident arrogance about him, and that's what it was with Cantona. And the guy had principles as well. You know what I mean? You know, some great. Make no mistake about it. Eric Cantona could handle himself. You know what I mean? He was 6'2". You know what I mean? He was a good size, a good shape, and, you know, obviously that got him into trouble at times. But he didn't really take any crap off anybody, did he? I mean, you know, we all remember the incident with the fan, and you know, if you look back further into his history, that happened actually a few times in France as well. Not to the extent that it did, but, you know, I'd read stories of, you know, fans waiting for him afterwards because of things that were exchanged between pitch and the terraces, and Cantona sorting them out, no problem. You know what I mean? So that, you know, that was a man who could handle himself as well. You know what I mean? He wasn't all mouth. You know what I mean? He was, he was somebody who could walk the walk as well. But, you know, in terms of a player, you know, behind my office here is a room which is, maybe I'll sit in there next time we'll talk. But it's like a den where we come to watch all the football games and everything. So it's plastered with football memorabilia, and there is one photo there, which is the 91-92 League Cup League champions with Leeds, and Cantona's in the back row, and he's there, and he's in a Leeds kit and all that kind of stuff. And even, you know, I see that photograph every day, and it's giving me goosebumps now. I still look at him. I do. I still look at him and think, that's one that got away there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's certainly one that got away, you know, and that was a hard one for a young teenager to take, that was, because he was certainly a hero of mine. But, you know, so like I know Leeds fans who will not, you know, maybe not put that picture up just because he's in it and because of where he went. But I get it. But he was still part of that squad and part of that title winning team and part of our history. So maybe wounds have healed a little bit, you know, over the years. But we had him for a short time. He give us, quite a few highs, not as many obviously as he did across the Pennines, but a wonderful talent. You know, rivalries aside, you can't speak too much about his talent. And I think the only shame about it is how early he retired, 30, 31 years old, and he was done Quite a very, very unique, again, mysterious character. A little bit like our own Bielsa today.
Oh yeah, I think he was a couple of sandwiches short of a picnic. Old Eric. But as you said, when I in his autobiography, there's one of his coaches, and there's a story of him, 3 fans waiting outside for him. And I think he was 17 at the time, and he was playing in a men's league, and yeah, he was the last one out, and the 3 of them waiting. And he sorted the 3 of them out. Coach didn't even have to get involved. Crazy.
Fantastic player. I think young Martin probably can't remember him, can he?
No, not quite. Just a bit before my time. I've seen all the highlights and the little clips they play on the Premier League, like on Sky and that. But just the aura around him for me, the fact he's still mentioned now and talked of in such high esteem. And was it Cronenberg he was doing the adverts for a few years ago when he was playing a farmer? Like that. He's just a character and a household name in football. And to have a player like that at your side, in your side, I should say, sorry, and be able to watch him for even if it's just like a year or two, like you were Cantona. Like for me, I just got the tail end of Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp playing together, and just to see, so it's the same sort of thing for me as an Arsenal fan, just to see.
Similar, absolutely, very similar. I mean, I actually got to watch Henry a lot. It's funny you mentioned Henry, because Henry came over here to play for the New York Red Bulls. So he played for the New York Red Bulls. So the interesting thing about New York Red Bulls is they don't play in New York. They actually play in New Jersey. So New York Red Bulls, it's just across the river, but it's still in New Jersey. So the stadium's only 45 minutes from me. So it's nowhere near what I get when I travel, to watch Wales play or watch Leeds play, but it's still something, it's still football and still got to watch. But, obviously one of the attractions at the time was Henry playing, and he was a class above in this league. I mean, he was 34, 35 at the, by the time he came over here. He had a massive designated player contract. He was making a lot of money. But, I got to watch Henry play live every other week or every 2 or 3 weeks. And if I'm totally honest, I probably was only going up there to watch him play. So there was nothing worse than getting up there and he wasn't named in the squad. Because I think by the time he got over here, he was picking and choosing games. But you're absolutely right. A Bergkamp, a Cantona, an Henry, exactly. And I got to experience him for basically half a season and half a season. So you know what I mean. So that one year between 2 seasons, and he just wasn't handled correctly at Leeds at the end. You know what I mean. He was seen as a very big gamble because of the problems that he'd had in France when Leeds took a chance on him, and it kind of worked out. And it worked out straight away. And the following season, he started off on a house on fire. I was at Wembley with my dad. We beat Liverpool 4-3 in the Charity Shield. That's another piece of silverware maybe I should chalk myself up to. But he scored a hat-trick that day on a hot August day at Wembley, the old Wembley. So you can imagine the adulation from the terraces for this Frenchman, foreigner, when foreigners weren't that common in English football. They just fell in love with him. And then, it's still, like I said, it's still a bit pill to swallow to see him leave there to go across to, I mean, at the time, Leeds and Man United were probably, the 2 biggest rivals in the league at the time. Leeds had just pipped Manchester United to the league. Manchester United went on to win the league, the following year, and we lost Cantona to them. So there was a lot, the rivalry had always been big since the 60s and 70s anyway. But at that period, it was at its height probably. So to lose, your best player, to them was, was heartbreaking at the time. But like I said to both of you, you can't underestimate his quality and what he brought to the game over here. Just a wonderful footballer and unique character, and can easily be mentioned in the same breath as the Henrys and the Bergkamps and the Zolas, I suppose, and Van Nistelrooy, and all those great Premier League foreigners that we've seen over the past 20 years or so. But yeah, I don't think they make him like him anymore.
I watched I don't know what the program's called, but it's on after Match of the Day, and it's Lineker with Alan Shearer and what's his name now? He's
Ian Wright.
No. He was City centre back.
Micah Richards.
Micah Richards, God, yeah.
Is it the Premier League Hall of Fame thing?
Yeah, I've been watching it every week, and like one week it's the hardest men, the next week it's the most bizarre transfers, the next week it's the best foreigner to play in, and there's been like about 8 different weeks with totally different categories. But Cantona has been like number 1 in 3 or 4 weeks between the 3 of them, and if you get a chance to watch him march, just even things like, it's just a different game these days. But back then he was scythed down by Vinnie Jones, and he rolls around twice, jumps straight back up, looks for who's done him, and Vinnie Jones he's turned around and buggered off, and he's meant to be the so-called hard man.
I mean, Vinnie Jones caught him.
Oh, big time.
Like he caught him, and Cantona did get up. I mean, Jones was an animal. I mean,
yeah.
At Wimbledon he was an animal. I mean, I managed to see Vinnie Jones playing a second division championship team for Leeds, where he only got booked twice all season, and he only played the one season for us, and he was a great signing for Leeds, and he's still well liked at Leeds, believe it or not. That was another transfer that was one of those ones that just worked and was probably needed at the time. And I can probably say, just because I saw him a bit more and he played for a club that I support, that he was probably a better footballer than he was given credit for. It's just that when he was at the other clubs, I think the managers preferred him to be the Vinnie Jones that we know. You know what I mean? With the hard man. But I remember that tackle that you're talking about with Cantona, and Cantona did get back up. Not many people got back up after Vinnie Jones whacked you, but it was like I said, he can handle himself, and he could take a whack off anybody and dish it out himself as well. I mean, Cantona let himself down a few times. I remember the stamp on Gareth Southgate. I think he did it to John Moncur once at Swindon Town as well. So I'm sure there were words between him and Ferguson at times, but Fergie always, as Ferguson always did, he did it behind closed doors and kept it private. And Cantona probably was apologetic, and he knew his worth to Ferguson knew his worth to Manchester United. But and Ferguson doesn't take any nonsense off anyone. We've seen so many players come and go when they try to be bigger than the club. Possibly the biggest captain you've ever had in Roy Keane. Even that when he had to go, Yeah. So yeah, really, really interesting character, and so good to talk about these players as well.
I love talking about him. For me, he's the best player that I've seen at United. Obviously, Ronaldo was too young. He was fantastic and he was there. But when he left United, that's when he started. That was his peak. Whereas Cantona was at his peak at United. Keane was fantastic. There's lots of Scholes, Giggs.
You had a lot of players at their peak at that point as well. Yeah. And that's why you had the success that you had. Cantona was at his peak. Even the McClays and the Hugheses and those types of players who might not be household names today or to the younger generation. You had so many players who were hitting their peak at the same time. Steve Bruce, Pallister, Schmeichel. The names just roll off the tongue, don't they? So but what Ferguson was always good at doing was, when they were getting on a little bit, was replacing him. That's what he was good at doing, and that's what Howard Wilkinson at Leeds was not so good at doing. We had the best midfield in the country at the time. We won that league going into the first Premier League season with Gary Speed, McAllister, Batty, and Strachan. It was generally considered to be the best midfield in the country, and he went out and bought 2 midfielders that summer. So it was just an area of the field we didn't need to improve in. I think we needed to improve in younger centre backs, for example. So Manchester United had gone out and bought the Pallisters of this world and invested money on those types of players, and he kind of stuck with his old school rigid back four, and that was what Ferguson was good at doing. I mean, Howard Wilkinson was manager of Leeds for 8 years. That's a long time to be manager of a football club. Ferguson, 25 years?
Yeah.
Wenger 20 years, just over 20 years. I mean, we're lucky today, right? If a manager sees I don't even know what the life expectancy of a Premier League manager is. Could be 18 months, maybe.
Yeah, I think apart from if you can't even say United or City now is established there, but any other club, even Man United now, you're talking if a manager lasts 4 years. Then he could be there for a long time. Anything less than 4 years, and he could be out within a year.
Yeah, it's a merry-go-round for sure.
Well, you look at Man United, you look at Ollie, you know, he's in his second season, and they're in the Europa Cup final. They got to the quarters of the FA Cup, and they're second in the league. And the hashtag last night trending on Twitter was Ollie out. It's like, seriously, what's wrong with you people? You know, you're second in the league against a team that's won the league 3 in the last 4, 4 in the last 6. They've got more money than any other, you know, team on the planet. So you're not going to compete against them, you know, and you're good. It's good to be less than 10 points away from them, you know, and that's only because they've lost the last couple of games because they're looking at the Champions League in a couple of weeks, you know. So to come, really, United have won the league. City are in a different league. That's why, you know,
you've been spoilt for so long. You had that, you know, decade of dominance, right? And it wasn't just a title here and there. It was 7 out of 10 or whatever it was, and it was numerous cups and European trophies as well. So, you know, I mean, you were spoiled, right? So so as fickle football fans, we're like children a little bit, right? You take the candy away from the baby, and the baby starts to cry a little bit, doesn't it? So, you know, again, it's just about being realistic, like you said. I mean, City are in a different league at the moment. I mean, okay, they finished well short of Liverpool last year, but I think that was a unique season from Liverpool, and you can see how Liverpool's squad is, or their second season, or their defense of their title. I think they're 40 points short of where they were at this time last season, 40 points short. I mean, that's an incredible drop when you think you've lost 40 points. I mean, I know they got to 99 or whatever it was, you know, and normally 85 to 90 wins you that league, 90 points. So even if you call it a 30-point drop, it's not the best defense with you know, of their title, with what they had available to them. You know, and it'll be really interesting. I don't know how the league is looking, but they've just snuck into the top 4 today now on goal difference.
Yeah, it'll be because they scored 3, didn't they?
So Leicester are on +20. Liverpool are on +22, and they're both on 66 points going into the last day. So Leicester, I feel, well, I mean, they just had a cup win, so they've had some silverware. But if you remember, this exact same thing happened to Leicester last season, where they dropped out of the top 4, I think, on the last weekend or the last 2 weekends of the season, and they've been in the top 4 all the season.
Yeah,
you know, they were second and third for a long time, and now they find themselves in 5th. So I mean, I suppose,
who have Liverpool got to play? Who's Liverpool's last game? Because Leicester playing Spurs.
Leicester are playing Spurs, right? Liverpool are home to Crystal Palace. So you've got to think that that's going to be a 3 points, and your goal difference improves, right?
Yeah.
And you know, and then Leicester are home to Tottenham. So I mean, they would have to hope for a Liverpool slip up, or if Liverpool win 1-0, Leicester would have to win 3 or 4-0.
Yeah, that's it. Liverpool have got to draw or lose them there.
Liverpool have been lucky there to sneak in. I mean, give them credit for keeping going, obviously, but from where they were at this point last season, I think it's a fair drop from Liverpool. I know they had the problems with the centre halves and Van Dijk in particular, you know, losing it. But I think what the top teams who kind of have that 5 to 10 year dominance, City, United in the past, if you lose a player like Van Dijk, they've always had somebody who can come in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Liverpool didn't seem to have that at all. And you know, it's like City, I mean, he's been picking different starting 11s for the last 10 weeks or so. I know it's all been geared towards, you know, trying to win the Champions League and saying, well, we're kind of safe and that we're going to win the Premier League. You know, that was kind of a give me quite a few weeks ago that they were going to win the league, even though, you know, Leeds beat them, and then, you know, they've lost a couple in the last few, but the league was already won, right? So I get it, but you know, if any big player is injured for City, like if De Bruyne was injured, they could bring somebody in who's fairly close in caliber.
Well, Gundogan came in and scored 4 goals in 5 games, didn't he?
Exactly. You know what I mean? I mean, we're talking about different areas of the field as well. And Van Dijk, you know, centre half is obviously a massive area of the field, and he's a big leader and everything like that. But, you know, he'll be fit next season, of course. It'll be interesting to see what Liverpool's reaction to their defence has been next season, because Man City's reaction to their defence last season was to go and win it again this year. You know, So it'll be interesting to see if Liverpool can do the same as City done. I don't know. I think City's squad is.
Well, you mentioned defence. Van Dijk, obviously. Van Dijk's out. Who do they bring in? They got nobody. They bring in.
Really have it. I mean, they messed around.
Henderson. Henderson in the back, and or Fabinho, or just ridiculous. Whereas you look at City. City, if Diaz doesn't play, then Laporte comes in, or John Stones. They got like 4 replacements.
I think there would be a little bit of pressure on Liverpool next year now to. Especially once Van Dijk is back fit, there'd be a bit of pressure for them to maybe bring in a player or two, in the summer, which I'm sure they will. But not only that, but push for the league again. Because their fans will be demanding that. I mean, they won that league for the first time in 30 years.
Yeah.
Last season, they don't want to wait another 30 years. I'm sure. I mean, Liverpool have won lots of things in those 30 years, other than the league, the European Cup a couple of times, League Cup. So they're always there and thereabouts as far as silverware is concerned. But I think they might be just added a little bit of pressure on Liverpool next year now to see what the reaction is going to be to this season, and how they defended their title. And seeing what City have done. City have gone, okay, you absolutely walked the league last year, so we're going to come back this year, and we're gonna hammer it ourselves, and they've done that, and they may well end up winning the European Cup. I mean, I don't know what your thoughts are. It's a dodgy one a little bit, because I think I think Chelsea are kind of set up to be a problem to Manchester City, the players that they have, and the way and the style of play that Tuchel has got them playing. But I would be surprised if Chelsea won the Champions League, next week or the following weekend, whenever it is, over Manchester City. I think Man City have got just a little bit too much for Chelsea.
I don't know. What do you think, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's all just set up for City to win the Champions League after Pep not getting, was it past the quarterfinals for so many years with Bayern and a few other teams. Didn't they beat him last time they played each other as well, Chelsea?
I think that Chelsea beat City, didn't they?
Yeah, but they had half a team on it.
It was the resting players, weren't they?
I think do you know what? It might have been easier for City to play against Madrid than Chelsea. I think City would have beaten Madrid in the final. Chelsea just seemed, since they replaced the manager halfway through the season and brought Tuchel in, it's not really Tuchel's team. He hasn't signed any of those players, right? So the fact that he got them playing and getting some better results and to the Champions League, I think deserves a lot of credit. I just think they may be more of a problem for City than Madrid would have been, because with Madrid, you know what you're going to get. It's the Zidane factor, and the Galacticos, and we've won it 10 times or whatever it is. You knew we were going to get. But I, in some ways, I just think Chelsea would be a harder game for City than playing a team that's not in their league. So I'm gonna say it won't be a great game of football. And I think Tuchel was set up fairly defensively.
Yeah.
And look to hit City on the break. And I think you might see City have a lot of possession. So I think you could see like a boring game which City will win 1-0 but have a lot of the ball. But just to say, I don't know, there's just a little part of me that says, Chelsea might be capable of something silly like a 2-1 win. You know what I mean? So I don't think it's cut and dry. I'll be surprised if City don't win it, but I don't think Chelsea are a dead man walking either. I think there's, they've won this competition before, in all fairness. And they've got pedigree. The manager's got pedigree, at this level. So I don't think it's a gimme by any means, but I would be surprised if City don't win it.
Yeah, I agree. I think City will win it. It'll just be a typical Premiership game because they know each other inside out. I just think City will they'll have rested key players in the last 2 to 3 weeks, and in the next, their last game is a dead rubber. Chelsea will need to win their next game to keep in the the Champions League area for next season if they don't win it. But I just think that it's for me, it's key is the resting of players, and they've got that many players that they've that they've rotated in the last 4 weeks, whereas Chelsea haven't got the ability to. They haven't got that many players in their squad who they can. I think Werner, since they brought him in, hasn't fired up at all. I know that Havertz has been bit part playing in the last 6 weeks because he had COVID, long COVID. He was a crucial player. I think they brought Marcus Alonso's played a lot more this season because he was phased out when who was the manager there? I think it was before Lampard. Was that Mourinho?
Conte.
Was it? Yeah. So one of them had.
It could have been anybody with Chelsea, right?
Yeah. Well, one of them had Alonso playing all the time, and then the next guy that came in didn't play him at all. And I thought it was really weird because he was scoring excellent free kicks. He was playing a wing back position rather than the left back that he was in when he was first brought in. He's back in there now and he's playing very well. So they've got a good a good set of players, but when they're playing week in week out because they're chasing the top 4, whereas City have got 8 midfielders just rotating. Apart from Foden, who's played a lot, he's got an amazing goal last night, by the way. Yeah. I just think that when you can rest, play once a week and you're still competing in every cup, then for me, that's the difference between them winning. And this is the only game they weren't bothered about losing in the final of the FA Cup. Yes, it's a cup, but it's a nothing cup compared to the Champions League. Everything is here. The last 6 weeks, I reckon, planning wise, whatever else they're in, they're planning for that final. And I just think that's what it'll be.
I don't think they'll start him. Me personally, I'd start Pulisic in a game like that. I think you'll bring him on, but Pulisic for me is their most gifted forward player.
Yeah,
maybe not not the top goal scorer type of thing, but he's the one who can pull something out of nothing. He's a top talent, that boy, and obviously he's very well liked over here in the States. He's the States poster boy these days, right? But he's very much a European type player, and I think he suits the Premier League down to the ground. For me, in a big game, in a one-off game, I think you start him. Something tells me that Tuchel won't start him and will bring him on if they're a goal down or so, that kind of thing, because a lot of planning has to go into this. But I would personally start him because I would rather have a match winner on the field. Man City have match winners everywhere, don't they? I mean, like you said, Werner he's done okay, but he hasn't, second season, I think he'll be judged, right? If he has a similar season next season, or a lesser season, then I think you'll see, them try to move Werner on. But I think for me that their most gifted forward player is Pulisic. I'd start him personally, but something tells me that they won't. So I mean, I think that's what everybody would be really keen to see. The day the final comes around is the starting lineups, right? What side is City going to pick? I think you can predict the Chelsea side a lot better than you can predict the City side, because you think with City sometimes you'd start somebody like Gundogan, for the way he's coming, and then he's on the bench. Like it's but those players don't have any problem with that either. And it's just something that works for City. So it'll be an intriguing final. I look forward to watching the Champions League final, and it's been moved to Portugal, and fans will be allowed in. Interesting to see the starting lineups, but if City don't win, I mean, what a chance for them to win it, right? I mean, I think it's great that a British club and an English club will be taking the European Cup back to our shores once again. I think that's good for the game in the country. But it's such an amazing opportunity for City. This is what that Abu Dhabi group bought them for, right? It's this moment, and even being a United fan, I think you won 2, right, and got to 1 final. That's 3. So all the success you have in Ferguson for 25 years, there's still only 3 finals. It's the most difficult final to get to. We all know that. So there's no saying that if they lose it this time, they'll automatically be there again next year. Martin already mentioned that the amount of quarterfinals that they've been in. It's such a difficult competition to get to the final too. So when you're there, you really got to take your chance. I mean, gambling man, money would be on City, but I wouldn't mind putting a side bet on Chelsea as well. You just never know with them. So we'll see.
I think he might choose Pulisic because he chose him ahead of Werner for the FA Cup final. So Werner might be playing against play on this weekend and Pulisic for the final.
Maybe. I mean, we can have a look at what their team lineup for the Premier League is going to be, and then maybe predict a little bit more. But I'd start him. I think he's a talented boy. I don't think we've seen the best of him yet. He's had 1 or 2 injury problems, but he is one of those players. Maybe a bit like Foden for City, where he can unlock a door, score a goal, create an assist, whatever. Very, very tricky, smart, intelligent player. So, I would pick him ahead of some of the other options. But I know he's been more of a bench option for Tuchel in recent weeks. And it's nothing to do with injuries because he's come out and said, I want to play, I want to start.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting. But that's the gamble, is that you start with Pulisic hoping he'll perform, because as well as I do, 70-75% of all substitutions are always made in the forward line. So would you rather bring Pulisic on, or would you rather start him and hope he performs? Because you would bet that if he doesn't perform, he would be one of the ones he'd take off, right? So so it'll be interesting to see. It's because with the Premier League was 1 week ago, relegation was sorted a couple of weeks ago. We all knew who was going down. We've been saying it, since the start of the season, since we've been doing these radio shows and things like that. So the only really exciting thing as far as the Premier League was concerned is really who's going to finish top 4, who's going to finish in the European places. Not really much excitement going on. So I think the Champions League now is a chance for everybody to enjoy a day of football and maybe see City create a bit of history. Like I said, Chelsea have already won it before. If I had to choose, you know what I mean, I would choose City just because I prefer City as a club to Chelsea, but very similar in certain ways as well because of the new money and things like that. But I think the Abu Dhabi group have done. It's different. It's London and it's the north as well, isn't it? So like it's a little bit of a different mindset and the way they've kind of set up with the training ground around the Etihad and what they do with the women's team and all that kind of thing. So like it's similar but different at the same time as well. So it'll be an intriguing match. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, yeah, same here. Right, it's been good to talk to you, Wayne. It's
same boys, same pleasure as always.
Yes, good to talk to you, Matt. And
cheers, cheers for coming on as well, Wayne.
No problem. Anytime.
Nice to meet you, man.
Yes, you've been listening to Randolph and Martin's Sports Talk on Sportanarium. Next up, we got Dave with his music section, and I'm sure that you'll join us next week, same time, 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. Have a good week, and we'll see you all next week.